and welcome to episode 21 of Tomorrow's World Audit Time. Good afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, Russ.
Yes, good afternoon, Russ. As you can probably hear, people, once again, I think only for the second time, thankfully, but Mark has decided to drag me out of bed at an ungodly, unnatural hour to record this podcast, practically at the crack of dawn, for his own spurious reasons. So I apologise right now. If I sound a bit bleary-eyed and slow, it's entirely his fault. What's your excuse,
Can we do a time
Mark?
check, Russ? What time is it in Amsterdam?
Is
it 25 past 1?
yeah, exactly. 25 past 1. You know I don't get up in single figures, Mark. Actually, before we start, I've just remembered something. I'd just like to say thank you to the Evening Standard, the journalist. What's her name? I've got her name written down here somewhere. What is it? Abba Shah at the Evening Standard for including us in her top 50 podcasts to listen to this summer. That was exciting, wasn't it, Mark? That happened.
It was genuinely exciting.
Yeah. We had a nice little picture of Raymond Baxter on our entry. That was good.
We did, yeah. Was he getting off a plane? Yeah, very glamorous.
Yeah,
that was exciting.
And because of that, I think we had some pretty healthy download figures.
We did.
And I think because of that, all the power's gone to my head, Mark, and I've decided to turn this podcast into something where I just exercise my personal hobby horses.
Oh, brilliant.
That's pretty much the inspiration behind this episode, where, for no reason whatsoever, it's a thing that's been bugging me for years, Mark. Absolutely years. I've probably mentioned it to you before.
You have.
In 1984 and 1985, there were two charity songs released, one on each side of the Atlantic. There was Band-Aid, Do They Know It's Christmas, released in December 1984, and then followed up with USA for Africa, We Are the World, January 1985. And it's occurred to me, Mark, that the people running Band-Aid must have been pretty annoyed that these Americans had come along and basically tried to steal their thunder only a month later. And so I've always wondered what would happen if they just faced against each other in a pub car park and had a massive fight.
I was just thinking, do you think that stolen thunder is why there won't be rain in Africa?
Yeah, that's a good point. So what happens is they just accosted each other in a pub car park and just started tearing lumps out of each other. Who do we think, weighing up each side of the fight, who do we think would win? What do you think, Mark? Is it something you've ever wondered about?
I have, but only when you've ever mentioned this scratch that you need to itch. Have I really thought about it? And it was only because you decided you wanted to have an episode kind of loosely timed around these two songs that I started looking at the artists involved in both songs. And it is interesting because obviously, if you're like us, you will look at two lists and then immediately decide, have an immediate definitive answer to a question that has absolutely no science behind it whatsoever. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting because We Are the World has the numbers.
Yep.
But I think Band-Aid has the street smarts.
Exactly right. Shall I, just for the benefit of people at home who probably don't have these memorised, shall I just quickly run through the roster?
The roster, yeah.
So in the blue corner, we've got Band-Aid, right? There's 37 people in total. And it goes like this. So we've got Kool and the Gang, half of U2, which is Bono and Adam Clayton, the Boomtown Rats, obviously including Bob Geldof, the mighty Sir Phil Collins, Midge Ure and Chris Cross from Ultravox, Bananarama, Boy George and John Moss from Culture Club, Heaven 17, Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran, Marilyn, George Michael, Status Quo, Sting, Jodie Watley from Shalimar, Paul Weller and Paul Young. And then in the red corner for USA for Africa, we've got 44 people in total, so that's a 7-person advantage there. And they've got Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Kenny Rogers, James Ingram, no idea who that is, Tina Turner, Billy Joel, Jacko, Diana Ross, Dionne Warwick, Willie Nelson, Al Jarreau, The Boss, Kenny Loggins, Steve Perry from Journey, Hall & Oates, Huey Lewis and the News, Cyndi Lauper, Kim Carnes, Bob Dylan, Ray Charles, Dan Aykroyd, Harry Belafonte, Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac, Sheila E., who's Prince's drummer, Bob Geldof again, the rest of the Jacksons, Waylon Jennings, Bette Midler, Jeffrey Osborne, all three Pointer Sisters, and Smokey Robinson. Yeah, so that's a much bigger lineup. Noticeably, in Band-Aid, out of the 37 people, there's only 4 women.
Yeah.
Whereas in USA for Africa, there's 11 women out of 44. I would say that immediately USA for Africa has got 2 people who probably have to sit the fight out because they're blind. I mean, I'm sure, especially Ray Charles, probably had quite a tough upbringing, and he wasn't blind. He wasn't blind when he was a kid. But I don't know. Certainly in a dark and in a pub car park, I'm not sure.
I don't think whether it's lit or dark makes a difference.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think it would be rude to assume they're going to take part. I think if Band-Aid think they're going to be squaring up against them, I think that would be unfair. I think,
Although, famously Bono has got glaucoma, isn't he? So I don't know whether that counts. Whether he had to sit out as well. Yeah,
he seems like the kind of person who would choose to. Am I being? Oh, maybe back then. No, he's all talk back then, wasn't he? We have the Bob Geldof quandary. I'm going to assume he's going to rush off to a corner and beat himself off.
Well, this is the thing. I'm imagining, like all good Jean-Claude Van Damme films. It's a Geldof versus Geldof fight.
Yeah, Van Damme plus Van Damme equals twice the Van damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know whether the Geldof of December '84 has any more or less street smarts than the Geldof of January 1985.
So the January 85, he's got an extra month of experience. But the December 84, he's got an extra month of youth.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think we can safely say they'll cancel each other out anyway.
Yeah, so. I agree with that. I kind of feel like We Are the World skews a bit older.
Well, definitely. I mean, Harry Belafonte's absolutely ancient, isn't he? I mean, it turns out I found out that this was his idea. Harry Belafonte saw Band-Aid and went, I'm copying that. And he's the one that got together Jacko and Lionel Richie to write the song.
I mean, it is an impressive list.
I mean, in terms of record sales, I think probably USA for Africa, individual record sales and actual record sales, because they sold like 20 million of this single, whereas Band-Aid only sold about, 3.2 million. So that must have really annoyed bands as well, to be honest. But I mean, standing out to me, I think probably, what is it? We were chatting about before we got on here, we were talking about Game of Thrones, Mark. There's that, everyone was looking forward to when those two giant fellas were going to fight each other.
Oh, yeah.
What do they call that? Was it?
The Mountain and the Hound.
The Mountain and the Hound, yeah. Tony Hadley from Spandau Ballet, 6'4". I think he's probably got to be the tallest person out of all of these.
When I was looking at the list last night, for some reason he stood out, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, he's a unit, isn't he?" Hadley's a unit. Yeah. He's at the back just waiting for tiredness, and then he's going to power in, isn't he?
So I'm assuming the USA for Africa are going to probably launch maybe Huey Lewis from Huey Lewis and the News. He's always struck me as quite a big fella as well. So I reckon he's probably take on Hadley and lose.
You think Lewis takes on Hadley?
I think so. I think he's probably the biggest person in the USA gang, possibly.
He's a bit of a chaos agent, isn't he? I can imagine his arms flailing like windmills.
Talking of flailing arms, I think probably Phil Collins is going to come in swinging. Got a tin of paint in one arm and a fax machine in the other. Absolutely. Yeah. All that pent-up frustration that man has, I think he'll probably be tearing into people.
A classic 4/4 beatdown. By the way, Gary and Martin Kemp, they played the Krays. I think that method acting, I think they were probably already preparing for the roles. I was looking at them thinking like, actually the whole of Spandau, I think is a bit of a secret weapon. A bit of a Swiss Army knife there.
Yeah. Also, I found out that Martin Kemp, he had to have a brain tumour removed, and he's now got a metal plate in his skull.
No way.
So he's basically a Mortal Kombat character now at this stage,
sakes,
isn't he? I mean,
Finish
that's
him.
got to help. Yeah, that's got to help, isn't it? Yeah, no, I agree. Spandau Ballet are probably pretty good there. Do you think you'd get away with calling a band Spandau Ballet these days?
No, I don't think so.
Especially, I mean, there's such a disconnect between that name
and the music they produce.
Isn't there?
Yeah, no, I don't think you would. Not with that. Not like big pop chart music band. No. Like an emo band. Yeah. If anything, it's not even edgy enough, is it? Bearing in mind their nearest, their kind of rivals were named after a side character from a 70s pseudo porn film. Yeah. It's a bit of a disconnect, isn't it?
Who actually, I don't think Duran Duran would do too well. Actually, they seem a bit too.
I agree.
A bit too,
Fey.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, if picture them up against the Jacksons. I mean, the Jacksons, they're all Jehovah's Witnesses, so I imagine they're just all terrorised by their father. I doubt they're particularly good in a fight either.
Except that I would hope that someone on the We Are the World side of things would be whispering into the Jacksons' ears and kind of implying that maybe Duran Duran look a bit like their dad or something like that. And see what kind of pent up anger comes, not bleeding out them because of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't like transfusions, do they? But comes through their fists with a righteous anger. Where do we put Bananarama in this?
Well, the blonde one's really tall, isn't she? She was struck me as really tall. I think they've got a punk background, haven't they, Bananarama?
They do. That's what I was thinking. It's like I was thinking like, well, I mean, Siobhan, I just think is full of scrap, isn't she? It's like I suppose like if this was like a 1990s or 1980s film, you'd immediately be pairing them up against some of the women on the other side. And I suppose I just don't like the idea of Bananarama railing on Diana Ross.
Well, you could make it fair by having them take on the Pointer Sisters, 3-on-3.
Oh, that's a good one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Different sizes as well.
Yeah.
So who takes on Diana Ross and Dionne Warwick?
Well, this is the thing, because what I was going to say is, I mean, you could...
Midura's not busy at the moment, is he?
I think Midura is probably the weakest person in this entire line. Genuinely, in the entire lineup, I reckon Midura would go down like a sack of spuds within seconds.
Yeah.
And probably start crying. But, oh yeah, no, I was thinking you could probably initially look at this through quite, maybe sexist eyes and go, oh, the women would not be able to take on the men.
Oh God, no,
but
Diana Ross.
But not on this. The women on the USA for Africa are all. I mean, you got Tina Turner, Diana Ross, Dionne Warwick, and Cyndi Lauper, and Bette Midler. They all sound like the sort of women that probably could do some damage.
Definitely, absolutely, yeah. They've all been, I kind of imagine they've all been forged in a fiery furnace, to get to where they are. They've scrapped their way up. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to take any of them on. That's the thing. It's like, so who are you pairing up against them? Like it's almost like do you give them a buy by putting them up against Ultravox, or what? I don't know. Or then again, what are Heaven 17? Status Quo. What about the Quo taking on the legends of?
See, I reckon the Quo would probably be quite decent, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, they starred in that action film, Bula Quo. Which,
they did, didn't they?
Which I went and saw at the cinema, Mark.
Yeah, I know you did.
I had to basically cycle to Essex to find a cinema that was showing it, but I was not disappointed. But yeah, and also I found out that Francis Rossi claims to have spent £1.7 million on cocaine in the 80s, which caused his septum to fall out. So presumably if anybody punched him on the nose, it would have absolutely no effect whatsoever. So I mean, that's probably
just wobble around, wouldn't
exactly,
it?
Yeah, that might
be
help.
Distracting.
And I just think that denim is quite hard wearing. It probably helps.
Yeah, definitely.
Like armour.
Yeah. Boomtown Rats? Who are they facing off against?
I know nothing about the rest of the Boomtown Rats apart from Bob Geldof. I mean, they're Irish, aren't they? Are they all Irish?
Are they all Irish?
I don't know. No, nothing about Boomtown Rats.
Is Johnny Fingers Irish?
That's a good name.
Yeah, he's in Dublin. Yeah, they all are. Looks like it. So you'd like to think that they're going to bring something, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I don't know anything about John Moss and the Culture Club.
Okay, I genuinely, as soon as I saw this list, I thought, right, obviously, I think Boy George is the absolute man to beat in this entire fight. He's the only one with an assault conviction.
Yeah.
So as long as he's got a metal chain in his hand, he's tearing through people. He's a big bloke, and I imagine he's had to put up with so much crap in his life that he would not suffer fools gladly. And then it turns out that John Moss, his bandmate, was a keen boxer at school.
No way.
Yeah. So the pair of them, I reckon they're just going to absolutely go through USA for Africa like a knife through butter.
I was about to say, the more I think about this, the more I talk about this, the more I think it's very clear which way this is going to end up, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, imagine how quickly Paul Simon would go down. He's a tiny, tiny little lad.
God, he is, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's gone, isn't he?
Yeah. I thought the same with Billy Joel, but then I found out that he was also a boxer as a teenager.
Yeah,
on the Golden Glove circuit. So he probably maybe a boxing match between him and John Moss might occur.
Like I'd like to think the boss will bring something, but he's also quite a short man as well, isn't he? So you'd like to think he'd tire out eventually.
And I think having gone through all of the USA for Africa people, it turns out their absolute secret star is Willie Nelson, who
really,
I mean, he's basically
not Dan Aykroyd, like I assume.
He's basically the Chuck Norris of the group.
Really?
Obviously, he grew up in rural Texas. But he's trained in Kung Fu, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, and has black belts in Taekwondo and the Korean martial art Gong Kwon Yusun.
Bloody hell.
So
do you think he's a leveler? Like, maybe this isn't the slam dunk I thought.
The only problem is he'd be so stoned.
High as a kite.
He'd be so stoned that he might not be able to work up the requisite amount of aggression.
Yeah, that's true. He'd need a lot of prime pumping, wouldn't he, Nelson?
Yeah. Anyway, we probably need to get on with the episode. But, I think we're gonna call it for.
Oh, for Band-Aid? Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, not for 100%. Like 75%, I'm certain Band-Aid would win.
All right. If you at home disagree, feel free.
Tell us why.
Feel free to email us.
Genuinely. I'd love to hear some other opinions.
Tomorrow's World Audit Time at gmail.com.
Yeah, what do you think?
Write in and tell us why.
No, I was gonna say I just feel like Band-Aid, like they have less to lose,
Mm.
and I kind of think there's just I look at this lineup, Russ, and I just see wily enthusiasm. Where I look at the American one, I just think there's a lot to protect there. There's a lot to kind of defend, you know, and you're losing numbers from disability, you know, it's I don't know, it's interesting. I'd be fascinated to know if anyone else felt completely differently and thought no Bandit, the US one all the way.
Yeah.
Also, like what you picked the venue, you said like a pub car park.
Yeah.
There's more of them. They may go, no, you're meeting us on our turf. You're meeting
like
us,
a baseball stadium. Like
well, I was going to say like one
Madison
of those
Square
bars on
Garden.
the highway where you get like a row of like 10 motorbikes outside.
Oh, yeah.
Madison Square Garden. I mean, it could be the MSG. Yeah, why not? Big home crowd cheering them on.
I mean, this is still could happen, Mark. Maybe we should get on the line to some promoters and try and make this happen. Obviously, not everybody will be able to turn up, but
I'd probably have to be hosting in Saudi. Not everybody can turn. Yeah. There'll be a few, omissions for various reasons. Yeah, no, it'll almost have to certainly. These days, everything's in Saudi Arabia or Dubai, so that'll be who hosts it. That's neutral territory. Yeah, I think it's back to the Brits there.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up, Mark.
Yeah, phew, hey?
Yeah. On to the topic in hand, Tomorrow's World. So obviously this episode comes from just 3 days after USA for Africa were in the recording studio. This is the 31st of January, 1985.
I was surprised, by the way, at the gap between recording that song and releasing it.
Yes.
Months passed.
Yeah. Maybe they just thought, we can't release it this close to Band-Aid because that's just too cheeky.
Yeah.
They should have called their song Do They Know It's Easter Time at All and just released it at Easter. Yeah, 31st of January 1985. A little bit too early for me to remember anything was particularly going on at this time, I don't think. But I think it's a very good episode, Mark, and I had a great time researching it.
So you told me.
Yeah.
Excited to find out what you've learned.
So shall we'll skip through the opening titles because they're exactly the same, and let's just play through straight through the first segment. Get on with that, you know? We've wasted enough time as it is.
Okay, hold it! That's what you get if you ask for a close shave. Of course, nowadays, if you expected such rude interruptions at your barber's, you might pick one that had fitted bulletproof glass. Wherever there's money, there's a threat of armed robbery. So now there's an increasing demand for bulletproof glass. But it's very heavy, because it's made up of many layers of glass stuck together.
When the bullet hits the first layer of glass, its nose is flattened and it's slowed down before it breaks through. As the bullet meets each subsequent sheet of glass, it's progressively flattened and slowed down until eventually it's stopped.
So the more powerful the gun, the thicker the glass needed to stop the bullet. If you wanted to stop one from, say, a Magnum 44, possibly the most powerful handgun in the world, then you'd need to have glass that was 42 millimeters thick. And that weighs 96 kilos per square metre. That's 200 pounds. A daunting prospect in a plate glass window. So, how do you make it lighter and still retain its stopping power? Well, obviously, a hard plastic like a polycarbonate is a lot lighter, but it's not very practical because it marks so easily. But why not stick the polycarbonate and the glass together? Well, they both expand and contract at different rates, so they'd eventually peel apart. But now they've developed a new bonding substance which will accommodate those different expansion rates. Set it up, Joe. And this is it. 3 layers of glass, a layer of the new bonding substance, and a layer of the polycarbonate. It's a lot thinner, it's half the weight, and it still has the same stopping power. And that's what's in this new security screen. Layers of glass on this side, which slow the bullet down, and a layer of polycarbonate on this side which catches it like a baseball glove. Add to that a reinforced frame and a bullet-resistant speech unit, and you've got a far lighter defensive screen, which, they say, will even stop a Magnum at very close range.
Well, what do you reckon, Mark? Do you think we can immediately tick the Macann abroad box there?
That absolutely looked like he was on location in the original Wild West, Ross. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, I'm surprised at how grey the skies looked in what I assume is Texas or New Mexico. And the buildings were strangely colourful, weren't they? Almost like it was... I never realised how accurate those lands in theme parks were.
Yeah. Well, you're actually off to Texas this week, aren't you, Mark?
I am, yeah. Next Saturday,
well,
yeah. I don't think I need to go now, Ross.
No, you don't.
I've seen
looks
Macann
exactly
there.
like that. The whole place looks exactly like that, Mark. Guarantee you. No, of course not. No, Macann's in it's a very interesting place, this place, but it's between Dartford and Sevenoaks. It's called Laredo Western Town. To have this, I think this segment is actually a really good opening segment, probably one of the best opening segments
really
we've
good.
had. It's got everything.
I really liked it.
It's got an exciting sort of setup, pretending it's a Western film. It's got quite an interesting invention. It involves guns, which we don't really see very much on Tomorrow's World. Great bit of music. Got everything, really.
This is one where the conceit that they dive headfirst into works. Like it kind of really brightens. Like it's an interesting invention, but they were right to kind of think like, oh, we should kind of gussy this up and have a bit of fun with it. And I think it works really well. Like, you know, Macann is off to have a shave at the barber's. And my one regret is that he's wearing kind of normal-ish clothes for Macann. It's like, I wish he kind of was the sheriff or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure if Judith Hann was doing this, she would be dressed in a cowboy outfit. I mean, she's worn cowboy outfits for much less than that. And she likes to dress for the occasion. But I don't know, maybe Macann's just a little bit too... a little bit too embarrassed to do it, or a little bit, not quite.
And yet, like, he has a lot of fun with it. I wonder if he regrets not kind of dressing it, because before he gets in shape, as I said in the notes, like he's got like 2 or 3 days worth of stuff. Like he's method grown some some shavable hair. He actually looks pretty rugged. He looks pretty cool, I thought. And there's a little bit later where he's at a bar talking about bulletproof glass it was, but then this new invention, and somebody slides it across the bar and he grabs it like you would do a whiskey or a sarsaparilla. And he looks like he's having a great old time. It's just a shame he didn't feel confident enough to kind of go all in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I think the cameramen and the editors and stuff having a bit of a fun day out for them, because actually get to do something a little bit more interesting.
Not every day you get to go to the glamorous location in between Sevenoaks and Dartford.
Oh yeah, shall I tell you about Laredo Western Town?
Yeah, I do.
It's weirdly still quite a secretive place. You can't find it on Google Maps. It's not marked on Google Maps. And it's entirely a private members thing. It's in the village of Forkham, and it was founded in 1971. Actually, I don't know how the maths work on this, but they just celebrated their 50th anniversary this year. It was founded in 1971.
Okay.
This is definitely 2022, isn't it? So I don't know.
It's definitely 2022.
Maybe they're not very good at maths. I don't know.
Pretty certain.
But there's a local farmer called John Truder, and everybody calls him JT, obviously. He was just really into old westerns, so he got together with some like-minded friends, and they built a log cabin and a corral on his farm, and they just used to ride around on horses and then sit around discussing the Old West. And it kind of built from there. And it just, over time, they just built more and more buildings. And then they started putting on Wild West shows for the public and things like that. I think they were one of the first groups to do that in Britain. But as they were going on over the years, they tried to become more and more authentic. So I think probably this one we're seeing here is more of their earlier effort, which is why like the bank is bright yellow and it looks like Looney Tunes stuff. But if you look at photos of it from more recently, it looks far more realistic. It looks more like like Deadwood sort of thing.
Deadwood or Westworld or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's got quite a few members of the club, and they all turn up every 2 weeks for like meets, and then they all just actually live like Western people. So there's no electricity or water or gas or whatever like that. They actually have to do all the Western things. People all dress up, and God knows what goes on there.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
Yeah. But on their website, laredouk.com, go on there. They've got a really good picture gallery, which is why I put a couple of pictures at the bottom of the thing.
Right.
There's loads and loads of pictures, and what they tend to do with a lot of them is they must take them on actually old-fashioned cameras and stuff.
Oh, so that second one. So the first one is like a classic picture.
So that first one, that is JT
That's
himself.
Him. Yeah, I love it.
I think that's his daughter Jolene with him there.
Oh, Jolene, of course, Jolene.
So he's looking, very smart. Them two, and then below that, that's Laredo's marshal and his group of lawmen.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a cracking picture. That's a
Yeah.
great job.
They said a really nice black and white. It looks like it was taken at the back then, doesn't it?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, there's loads of pictures.
A high def, but like a lovely bit of sepia.
There's loads of pictures like that on there. It's really worth looking through them, actually. I quite enjoyed that. There is quite a funny one where it's clearly Christmas and they've all got paper crowns on top of their cowboy hats. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, this place is an absolute boon for TV people, especially like lazy, cheap TV people like the BBC who don't want to don't want to travel to a location too far outside the M25.
Barely travel outside Shepherd's Bush.
so it's been used loads of times. The thing I remember it mostly from is that episode of Red Dwarf where they all go inside like an artificial reality machine. It's called Gunman of the Apocalypse. And they have to play out a Western to save Crichton from some sort of, I don't know, computer virus or something like that.
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, the only Red Dwarf episode to win an Emmy, that is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The only line from it I remember is Brett Riverboat, Knife Man. But it's been on loads of other stuff. It had, until recently, it had 24 different buildings. There was a 2-story hotel with a saloon bar, 6 guest rooms, marshal's office, a working blacksmith, gunsmith, general store, undertaker, bank, tobacconist. Basically, it had everything you could possibly want in Wild West town. However, just last November the 18th, someone left a log burner on and it just caught fire, and over a third of the whole place just burnt to the ground.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but so ever since then they've been rebuilding it, trying to bring it back to its former glory. But there's a GoFundMe; it's still running. If anybody wants to contribute, and they've currently raised £15,825 of its £25,000 goal. I think £25,000 quite cheap for an entire Western town.
Feels like it, especially with the way inflation's going at the moment. That seems like a bargain.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to them. I'm sorry to hear that. That's a shame. That must be very heartbreaking.
Yeah, so it's kind of fit. I mean, they do have a lot of fires in Wild West films, don't they? Like stuff catching fire,
They do.
horses running
It's true.
around.
Yeah,
So it's probably quite an authentic experience for them for one night.
I'm sure that's how they see it as well.
At least like no barrels of gunpowder caught fire or anything like that.
It's true.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Laredo. What should we say about this piece? Have we got anything?
I don't know. It's quite a simple piece, isn't it? It's like So at one point, Macann kind of pulls out a magnum and he kind of points it at this glass, and you cut to a slow motion shot, obviously filmed separately in a lab, showing a bullet hitting the glass in slow motion. It's satisfying in this. It's always satisfying to see stuff like that.
Yeah.
It did. I think we both did the same thing. It's like you and I, independently of each other, both fired magnums, and they are absolutely frightening.
Yeah, utterly like it's shaking with fear after firing it.
It is. They are ridiculous.
Yeah,
like guns are ridiculous, but specifically, this is a very specifically ridiculous gun to. I don't know. I also fired a Desert Eagle, which is also another ridiculous weapon to fire. Yeah, so like I'm not shocked at all that maybe Macann didn't fire, but then you do see a cutaway and like you see a man with his sleeves firing the gun on location. I'm assuming it's a blank.
Would he have legally been able to fire that if he was in Kent?
I doubt it. I have to see. I assume they probably asked him just to put his jacket on or something like that. But then again, I don't know, because you don't see Macann face on firing the weapon.
No.
And in general, I've got no problem. When it comes to... I assume the decisions about what they showed or what they did is all to do with safety, so I've got no particular problem with that. But I just wanted to say, like, the actual slow motion of the gun kind of hitting the glass and the glass all kind of fracturing, but then kind of staying put is really satisfying. There's a bit where it goes back to location and Macann kind of rubs his hand over the window and it's, there's not even a bump anywhere. And he talks about how there's no shards. Though you made the point, obviously, that this kind of plastic film, this baseball mitt of plastic film that catches all the debris is only on one side. So does that mean that the people on the other side of the glass firing the weapon are going to be showered with ricochet glass straight into their faces? That's left to the imagination, unfortunately.
Incidentally, I found out that, did you know that ricocheted glass splinters are known as spall, S-P-A-L-L, like Timothy Spall? Found that out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder why they felt the need to invent a word.
I don't know.
Oh, very good. Yeah. No, I thought altogether, I thought it was a really enjoyable piece.
You mentioned the Magnum there, Mark.
I did, yeah.
And I don't know whether we have...
Ridiculous thing.
There's a lot of gun nerds, isn't there? And obviously mostly Americans. But I think there's probably quite a few British gun nerds as well. So I'm sure we have like a few gun nerds listening to this. And I imagine they're probably screaming at their iPods or whatever they're listening to about the fact that Macann and us and Dirty Harry all make the same mistake of calling the 44 Magnum the most powerful handgun in the world. Because the 44 Magnum is not a gun. 44 Magnum is the ammo So you can't just buy a gun called a 44 Magnum. You can buy a gun that takes 44 Magnum ammo, but it would be a Colt or whatever.
Yeah.
Dirty Harry's gun is called a Smith & Wesson Model 29, for example, but that takes 44 Magnum bullets. So when Dirty Harry says this is a 44 Magnum, most powerful handgun in the world, he's
a flat liar.
Yes, he's lying. He's wrong. Yeah. So there you go. That's a fact.
He's a flat liar. Unbelievable.
So yeah.
Yeah.
That's ruined Dirty Harry for you, isn't it?
That's interesting. Yeah.
But the 44 Magnum was the most powerful ammo in the world at the time, till it was superseded. And I was looking, well, how powerful is it? One of the reasons it was invented is because it's so powerful you can use it in a rifle or a handgun. It's like, so people use it for hunting. And you can stop pretty much anything with a 44 Magnum. They hunt elk with it. According to Wikipedia, it has been used against elephants with success. But the thing that stood out to me was that publisher Robert E. Peterson took a record-setting polar bear with a Smith & Wesson Model 29. So this man took on a polar bear with Dirty Harry's gun. I mean, do you think he did the speech before he before he did that? I mean, this is disgusting. Obviously, shooting polar bears, but what sort of lunatic goes out into the Arctic and tries to Dirty Harry a polar bear?
I don't know. It's like I'm assuming the polar bear was unarmed, so it doesn't seem like a fair fight anyway. I don't know. I don't understand big game. I don't understand hunting, let alone big game hunting. At least with hunting, is like you get the impression that, especially in America, like you have a friend who lived over in North Carolina, and he went hunting, and like I think they utilized what they hunted, didn't they? Like that was part of parcel.
They came back with a deer, and they immediately skinned it, and then we ate it.
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
problem with that.
And I'm sure at last ages, no, absolutely. But then big game hunting is like that. There is literally no sport, and there's no utility. It is just needlessly cruel. No, cruel isn't even the right word. Sadistic.
Yeah.
No politics. Hashtag no politics, everyone. But, you know. I don't know. I don't know what possesses a man to decide he wants to go and shoot a polar bear with a Dirty Harry's gun.
No.
That's certainly not on my bucket list.
Maybe we should start arming the bears with guns.
I think that'd be a laugh, wouldn't it? What if he turned up and he was surprised? Now it's a fair fight. I tell you what, if you win that one, you deserve that pelt on your floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mono on mono. Yeah, so regarding bulletproof glass, I mean, bulletproof glass itself hasn't really... Well, first of all, Macann makes the classic Tomorrow's World mistake of like giving us a good understanding of what the situation is. Telling us that there's a new invention, but not actually explaining really. It just goes, oh, it's a new type of bonding stuff. He doesn't actually say why this new type of bonding stuff works better than the old type of bonding stuff, or what it is, or anything like that. That's kind of skipped over. Yeah. Even though that is actually the invention that we're looking at. So it's an entertaining piece, but the very thing that the whole piece is centered around is the thing that just gets mentioned in one sentence in the whole thing, which I find interesting. It happens quite a lot in Tomorrow's World, I think. I guess because I don't want to give away too many of the secrets. I don't know. But yeah, so bulletproof glass, apart from this new bonding thing, which I don't know obviously what it is or whether it still exists, is still pretty much the same as he explains. It's layers of glass and polycarbonate plastic. And the rule is that the more powerful a bullet you want to stop, the more glass you use, and the lighter you want it, the more plastic you use. So it's basically striking a balance between those two things. However, now this is exciting. This is very exciting. It turns out that there is a new super material which was invented around 2000. Well, the US military announced that they'd started using it in 2005 experiment. And it's called ALON, Mark, and which stands for aluminium oxynitride. Have you ever seen Star Trek 4, Mark?
Which was that one?
The one with the whales?
Yes, I was going to say, is that the one in San Francisco? Yes, I have.
You know, Scotty.
Transparent aluminium, isn't that what you talked about?
This is transparent aluminium. So it turns out that transparent aluminium exists, and it's this.
Okay, that's quite exciting.
And much like transparent aluminium in Star Trek, it is much stronger and lighter than glass. So this stuff, probably, I assume, costs an absolute fortune to make. This stuff can be half as thick and weighs half as much as the glass version of it. So you can make much stronger bulletproof barriers, and they're much lighter as well. So obviously that's why the US military are all over it. If you look at a list of what bullets can these different things stop, basically, if you've got a bulletproof glass, the thickness of Macann's there, which I think it says is 41 millimeters thick. I think he says.
Yeah, well, that sounds right. Yeah,
that's about so that is good enough to stop a That's good enough to stop a Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world. And then after that, stuff will probably start going through it.
Yeah.
If you have an Alon piece of shielding, which is just as see-through as glass, but the same thickness as that, it will stop what's known as a .50 BMG bullet, which is for a Browning machine gun. One of those big belt-fed machine guns, the type that they attach to helicopters and aeroplanes.
Helicopters, yeah.
I think the bullets are just under 6 inches long, right? And are so powerful that police sometimes use them to stop cars by firing them through the engines, right? A piece of Alon will stop one of those dead in its tracks. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? And now, so whenever you see, like, I don't know, that most recent James Bond film where they're shooting up his Aston Martin, and you think, well, no bulletproof glass is ever going to stop that. I now realise, well, as long as James Bond's Aston Martin's got Alon windscreen, then it's going to absolutely be fine.
Yeah. Why did they make the whole car out of Alon then?
Yeah. I mean, they should make a Tesla out of it and call it the Elon Musk, shouldn't they? But yeah, so that's it. Alon, that's the highest level of possible bullet resistance, level 10. Whereas most bulletproof glass only goes up to sort of like level 4 or 5. Pretty good stuff, that, Mark. I'd quite like to get myself some and have a go on it.
Have a go at it. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I presume, look forward to the new age of American super soldiers running around
in naked underneath transparent uniforms. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Shout out for the music, by the way.
Oh, of course, I forgot about the music. Yeah. Immediately, the best piece of music of the episode. I mean, even if I hadn't seen the rest of the episode, I would assume it was the best piece of music.
Takes a beating.
Because it's one of the Western greats, isn't it? It's like Wild West music. I think is some of the consistently best film music.
Specifically spaghetti western as well.
Yeah. And I think probably, if you'd asked me, I would have assumed this is by Ennio Morricone. It's got that sort of sound to it, but it's not. It's by a man called Roberto Bragadio. You can tell I went to Italy a couple of weeks ago, can't you, Mark?
I can. With that pronunciation. Yeah, it's really rubbed off on you. It's quite astonishing, actually. Yeah.
It's called Il Pistolero del Ave Maria.
Oh, wow. So lyrical when you pronounce it, isn't it?
Which translates in English as Gunman of the Hail Mary. Although the film in English isn't called Gunman of the Hail Mary, even though the film in Italian is called that. In English, the film is called The Forgotten Pistolero. It's a 1969 Italian spaghetti western. 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. I've never seen it. I've never even heard of it. It's weird, isn't it?
No, never heard of it.
Such an incredibly famous piece of
iconic
music.
Or
it's from a film that nobody's ever heard of. But I did find out that they used to use it in Ren and Stimpy a lot, so maybe that's why I know it so well.
Oh. It's definitely, I've heard this so many times, actually, but normally for pastiches, I think.
Yeah. Maybe the rights to it are
useful.
Particularly cheap. Maybe the rights to that are much cheaper than like an Ennio Morricone track.
Yes, I would imagine the Bragadio estate is probably a little bit less expensive to deal with than the Morricone.
Right.
Well, on that note.
What's that, Mark? I can't smell something.
Now, a league table you won't see on Grandstand. It is, in fact, the government table of the smelliest industries in the country, based not so much on how smelly they actually are, but on a number of complaints received from the general public. So, in third place, always going to be there or thereabouts, pig farming. Number 2, what a good showing this by Knacker's Yard. One to watch, I think. But in first place, the Everton of Pongs is maggot farming. Consistency itself, this one, utterly dependable. And the point, by the way, of sharing this little-known information with you is to demonstrate a hard-nosed, tough-tackling midfield chemical that could rout this lot. In fact, it first came from these flax fields, staple of the Northern Ireland linen industry. Scientists found a chemical in the plants, which they developed into a powerful catalyst, capable of converting even the most pungent chemicals into smaller, odourless molecules. In many existing odour removal systems, the smelly chemicals are physically trapped by a filter, well, say charcoal. But as more and more molecules build up, the filter eventually becomes clogged and useless. This new catalyst works in an entirely different way. It's made of long, starch-like molecules, and chemists found that these long chains were able to hold vast numbers of highly reactive manganese atoms. As the smell-bearing fumes pass over the catalyst, the manganese breaks these fumes down to odourless water and carbon dioxide, which pass through, leaving the catalyst free to carry on working almost indefinitely. OK, so much for the claims. In here are several thousand maggots, which at 2 or 3 days old are at the peak of their pungent potential. And next to the maggots is an odour analyser to measure the strength of that smell. The two are linked by a plastic tube. This is the reading we're getting. In fact, it's about, let me just jot it down here, it's about 60 smelly parts per million. It may not sound a lot, but it is a lot. But I'm going to divert the smell from these maggots via this pilot plant containing the new catalyst, and finally to link the exhaust from the catalyst to the odour analyser. We'll see in a second what reading we get. Let me just tell you first of all that this is all the catalyst you need to remove the smell from those maggots. This is sitting in this pipe here, by the way. And of course the catalyst could be used in all sorts of farms, factories, restaurant kitchens, even car exhausts. It begins working almost instantly, and even after this short time we ought to be able to see the odour analyser's trace taking a nosedive. How tremendous, it's looking terrific already. There's a trace going down and down and down and down.
Favourite smell, Mark?
Favourite smell? Gosh. Wow, you really put me on the spot there, Ross. I've not got a great sense of smell, which has kind of hindered me and been a benefit throughout my life. So I tend to smell odd things quite profoundly. Favourite smell? I have to think about that one. Do you have one instantly?
I have two.
Two?
The leaves of tomato plants.
Oh, that's a curious one. I didn't even know they smelled of anything.
And creosote.
Creosote. Well, I mean, everyone loves a smell of petrol at a petrol station, don't they? That's a very common
and the third one actually, tumble dryer outlets. You know, there's a tumble dryer outlet pipe.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the smell of those.
God, I'd have to have a think about my favourite smell. It's an interesting one. It's such a profound sense, isn't it? Like it's like a direct connection to memories in a way that most other things don't. Which is why this is actually quite an interesting piece, because there is almost nothing more destructive to somebody's well-being than being bombarded by appalling and awful smells. That just cannot be. You cannot scrub a smell from the air, can you?
No.
Unless, of course, you have some kind of catalytic converter. One assumes. I'll try and come back to you in a favourite smell. Go on.
Okay, it's all right. You've got another 5 hours or so to think of it. Yeah, so I mean, I think this opens quite an entertaining opening here with old Kieran. Kieran with his light-hearted approach. He's got just basically a board there, and he's pretending that there's a league table of smells, and he's telling us about them.
He reveals them. He pulls off a panel and reveals what's number 3. It's quite fun, actually. I really enjoy it. There's not enough league tables in Tomorrow's World for my enjoyment, it would seem. I didn't know something was missing, and now I know what it is.
I thought it was interesting that the text was in different intensities of orange as well. I don't know what that was all about.
I don't understand. That's definitely an Instagram picture. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and I think probably maybe slightly dates it in that obviously we still have plenty of pig farms. I don't think we have many knackers yards or maggot farms anymore. I mean, I know fishing is still a popular hobby. I just imagine probably maggot farming has moved on slightly in some way or other. And I mean, knackers yards is just where they boil down horses, and I very much doubt there's much horse boiling going on. Well, I mean, they put them in lasagnas for a start, so they don't need to do that. So I don't know whether that kind of dates it slightly, but I can't imagine any of them did smell very nice at the time. Fully on board with those being the 3 worst smells.
Well, I'm surprised your local tip wouldn't be on there, because that was always one of the things when you'd go to your tip with like your dad or your mum in the car, you'd smell the tip before you got into it because it was very pungent on the air. That's not on the list. Yeah, I mean,
the lads that work down the sewage works are high-fiving themselves. They're
not on the top 3.
Yeah,
pig farms definitely made sense because, growing up what we did in Kent, every now and then there'd be a summer where the smell of the pig farms in Belgium would waft over the channel, and it would just be all pervasive throughout the day. You just everywhere you go, you smell pig farms from the continent.
That is impressive that a smell can come all the way from Belgium, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was news, wasn't it? It was almost like you might want to shut your doors and close your windows because the right weather pattern at the right time of year means. I mean, how many pig farms are there in Belgium anyway? And how come no one in Belgium ever complains about them? But that's just a memory I have, and I do remember you could smell it in the air.
Do you think that sowed the I mean, Kent is generally is a bit of a Brexity county. Do you think that sowed the seeds? With the exception
of one location, Russ.
Yeah, the smell of the Belgians put them off the continent.
I think so. Well, look, it can help, kind of. It doesn't make you feel wanted. Maggot farms, I'm not aware of ever having come across a maggot farm. And knackers yard, you actually have to explain to me because knackers means something different from where I grew up. But
yes.
So the idea of towns being populated by places where they're boiling down horses, that's a new one.
I did like your idea that it was just. I
just thought it was
just some tinkers
Yeah, I thought it was a tinker's yard. I was thinking odds and sods. I assumed it was Steptoe and Sons.
Old washing machines.
So you dirty old man. It's like, I didn't realise he was that dirty. Yeah, washing machines and like bits of car. And then you politely explain that no, knackers does mean something different. I was like, yeah, I've never in my life ever come across, I believe, a knackers yard, because I just can't imagine anyone getting planning permission to have a slaughterhouse for injured animals.
I think it stems from an old sort of, obviously when people used to go everywhere on horses.
Yeah, of course.
So in cities, there'd be all these horses, and if they ever got lame or whatever, they get sent straight down the knacker's yard. So it was just much more of a thing back then. I mean, I don't know why they're still around in the 80s. I'm not really sure.
Apparently they are, though.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a maggot farm in every street corner in Britain.
I remember seeing a TV program about a maggot farm, and it did look pretty grim. But then again, I reckon probably that's one of those things where the least glamorous jobs are always, businesses anyway, are probably some of the most lucrative. I imagine it's a license to bring money, owning a maggot farm. I mean, what outlays have you got? I mean, I doubt.
True, yeah.
A tub of blue bottles costs very much.
A tub of blue bottles. I'll have a half a pound of blue bottles, please.
Yeah.
And some dolly mixtures.
I do have a slight issue with that, though, because obviously a maggot farm, the reason it smells is because it's full of rotting carcasses on which the maggots
feed, yeah.
And it's the rotting carcasses that are making the smell. I don't think that maggots themselves in isolation actually smell. Because I don't know whether have you ever been fishing, Mark? Have you ever sniffed? If you go fishing and you've got live maggots, take a big old whiff of the tub of live maggots there. Doesn't smell particularly offensive. I mean,
I'm sure it doesn't smell
fragrant, but it doesn't smell particularly disgusting.
Yeah.
So
you're not going to dab a maggot behind your on your neck and behind your ears, are you? To kind of seduce a lovely lady.
So even though it's not really the maggots that smell, they've decided, Kieran here, to have a big tub of maggots. Whereas really, he should have like a decomposing fox. That would be, a real test of this device. And also, I imagine like a maggot farm's probably quite out in the open. So how are you going to connect this smell-reducing device to an entire farm?
Yeah.
Unless you have your maggot farm in like a Centre Park style plastic bubble.
So to explain what it is he's got, he's got these maggots in this medium-sized perspex box. And at the top of it, he has a tube, and that tube is running off down to a machine that is showing a kind of it's a bit like a lie detector, isn't it? It's got like a pen and an arm, and it's just kind of. And he explains that in very scientific terms that there are 60 smelly parts per million, which doesn't sound a lot, but apparently it is.
That is the SI. That is the SI unit of smelliness, Mark.
Yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely. Because to be fair, no alternative is offered to us, so we have to assume that is the standard definition of smelliness. And then he's explained to us, and actually, it was very nice to hear Kieran talk about charcoal again, which feels like, anecdotally, every single episode we've seen him in, he has talked about activated charcoal.
It does
or
seem
charcoal
like that.
as a filter.
Yeah,
it certainly feels that way.
I feel like he lives in a house made purely of activated charcoal at this point.
Well, I mean, they keep giving it to him, so we might as well bring it home.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe it might be all 3 episodes, because I can think of 3 different segments that are all different. So that was nice. But then he moves on to this new gigantic device which towers over the perspex box. It even has a lovely pipe coming out at the top of it, and then he plugs the tube from the perspex box into this catalytic converter or whatever, catalytic filtration device, and then sure enough, obviously the smellometer starts reducing in very gratifying steps down. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh, that's very clever. And then like you, I was thinking like, oh, hang on a minute. So what now? So now all the pigs are in they're shitting in perspex boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that doesn't seem that, I know we enjoy our cruel farmer as much as the next person, but that seems, I mean, even a farmer would think that's possibly inhumane.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't understand how this was convertible into the 3 examples they have of because none of them could ever utilize this equipment because it requires it to be sealed within a kind of an eco chamber, basically, so that it's whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exhausts go out. In a factory, yeah, absolutely. At the end of a car engine, absolutely. But in a maggot farm or a knacker's yard, no, not at all. I mean, yeah, that was a bit like, oh, hang on a minute, so that whole thing was pointless. As much as I enjoyed the league table, it was completely pointless.
Yeah.
He's literally just listing things that we know smell and then talking about something completely different.
Well, they've discovered this catalyst.
Yeah.
That's the initiative. They discovered the catalyst
from flax. Is that right? From the Northern Irish.
Yeah, and they're basically struggling to come up with a use for it. They've just cobbled this together So it looks impressive, but actually there's not actually any real sort of real world use for it that we can see, is there? But we're just kind of impressed by the...
Well, the thing is, I think we could think of a
effectiveness of it.
real world usage, but they have literally come up with 3 examples where this just is not applicable. It's not even like they've kind of struggled to kind of think of a real world use, because like you could, like, you know, as I said, like attached to the top of a factory chimney or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like that is a better example than a maggot farm or a pig farm, because there is literally no... I mean, if you have one of these sitting next to a pig farm, it's not going to do anything. It's like, but I don't think it would have been difficult to explain how it would be beneficial down the line. But it's interesting. I can only assume, therefore, that whoever invented has not come, as you say, are themselves struggling to get traction, perhaps, with people who might want to use it. I have to say, it is quite a large bit of equipment, and it looks probably quite expensive.
And also, I only noticed this time we watched it, every so often making a thump noise in the background.
I noticed the noise as well, yeah.
Which sounds like someone's having a game of darts off camera.
That was a different episode of... no, that was archery before, wasn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, Mark, you said you like league tables, didn't you?
I do like a league table, Russ.
Well, would you know it, Mark? I found some other league tables here that you might be interested in listening to.
Oh, I'm leaning in now, metaphorically.
So luckily, some company called Lifestyle Packaging did all the heavy lifting for us. And they just sent freedom of information requests to all of the councils in Britain and asked them about their nuisance smell complaints. And they've compiled it into a few league tables here. Not all of the councils answered, but the ones that did represent 58 million of the population. So pretty much most of the population involved here. And out of that, between the years 2015 and 2019, there were 114,411 complaints, which is a palindrome, Mark, which I was quite pleased by when I saw that. But yeah, so they've got a table of the top 10 smelliest places to live in the UK. So they've worked out number of complaints per capita. So I'll run those down.
I am interested. Go on then.
10th place, West Lancashire. 9, Swansea. 8, Tainbridge. Is that Tainbridge or Tynebridge? I don't know how to pronounce that.
Tainbridge, I think, isn't it?
7, North Norfolk. 6, Ashford. 5, Chichester. 4, Westminster. That'll be all those pigs with their snouts in the trough in Parliament, I would have thought, Mark. 3, Northwest Leicestershire. 2, City of London. And 1, Bassetlaw, which has far more complaints than anywhere else. I don't know, where's Bassetlaw?
Where's Bassetlaw?
I should look this up, really, shouldn't I?
I thought you had to. I thought you were going to tell me where Bassetlaw is, because that's the obvious question. Apologies if you're listening.
Oh, it's just outside Sheffield.
Oh, okay.
So there must be some industrial smells there, maybe. So then the other thing they did is they did the most common smell complaints in the UK.
The City of London only has about 8,000 residents, so what on earth are they complaining about?
The smell of money, Mark.
There must be, and it's mostly people in the Barbican. Anyway, go on. Sorry, the smell of money. Yeah.
The most common. So the complaints have been put in categories, and then they've put them in. They've done a top 10 of the most common complaints. Joint 9th, we've got industrial and animal. 8th place is air quality. 7th place is commercial industrial. Joint 5th is sewage and restaurants. It's an interesting combination there. 4 is bonfire. 3 is agricultural. 2 is domestic. And 1 is non-specified.
Brilliant. Non-specified smell.
Yeah. But the interesting thing here is that then the best thing they've done, which I mean, hats off to them. They then looked at every single local council and found the most unusual smell complaint.
Oh, how exciting.
For that council.
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not going to read them all out because that'd be insane.
No, of course not.
But I've picked out a few highlights that tickled me.
Yeah.
This is basically a list of councils and the weirdest complaint they had. Blabby. Where's Blaby? Blabby. I've never even heard of that.
I've never heard of it.
Bread factory. Who complain about that? Bladder Gwent. Hole in garden. Bury. Blood guts being dumped into lorry. Cheshire East. Noxious curry smell. Craven. Fatty lemony smell in bathroom. Daventry. Neighbour urinating in his doorway. Derbyshire Dales. Excrement that came from the sky. East Lindsey. Maggot factory. Horsham. Coffee roasting smell. I thought most people like that. Ipswich, funeral parlour. Probably need to get their fridges checked, I think.
Crikey.
Lancaster, leaving incontinence pads in communal area.
Oh, that's rude.
Midlothian, stockpiling of sewage sludge cake. What's a sewage? Is a sewage sludge cake a thing, or have they just made that up?
Stockpiling it? I think that sounds made up, doesn't it?
Neath Port Talbot, neighbour is pouring urine down kitchen sink. New Forest, smell from waffles. North East Lincolnshire, hot tub smell. That's got swingers written all over it, isn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Norwich, children being sick on school bus.
Boyd and
How
the
often has that got to
Swingers.
happen for you to make a smell complaint to the council?
More than once.
Nuneaton and Bedworth, throwing urine out of the window. Renfrewshire, smell of bitumen from wife's clothes.
Complain to the council about your own wife's clothes smelling of bitumen. Gosh.
Solihull, body odour. Blimey, that's got to be some bad body odour if you're complaining to the council, isn't it?
Wow.
Stafford, excessive spraying of air freshener. Thanet, I think this might be the worst one. Dog urine is coming down the walls from the flat above.
Oh.
And then these last two I've included because they're close to our own hearts here, Mark. Tunbridge, son urinating in back garden. And Tunbridge Wells, poop floating in garden from next door's blockage.
Oh, that's gross, isn't it? I'm fascinated. I'm still fascinated by ringing the council to complain about the bitumen smell from your wife's clothes. Wash them.
The fact
How
actually,
about you wash them?
I've just realised that I didn't include it. There was another one of the councils. They were complaining about the smell of bitumen from incoming ships. I can't remember which council it was. But now I'm thinking, is there a connection? Is this guy's wife having an affair with one of the sailors on the ship?
Oh, what a lovely story. She's rolling around in bitumen every night. You reminded me, I went on a visit to the mortuary here in Hackney. And
all right, Jimmy.
it was a perfectly normal visit, Russ. And it was an interesting place, and they were really lovely people. I think it takes a peculiar type of personality to choose to work in a mortuary or a funeral parlour. But, we're all very grateful for the people who do. And it was only as I left that I realised what slightly creeped me out, and it was the incredible smell of cleaning products. Like, it was spotlessly clean.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was creepy, but then actually it was the fact that there was an underlying odor to there was the high note was all the kind of chemical smells and the classic smell of it, but underneath that there was a very sweet low timbre smell, and I think that I slowly kind of, as the longer I was there, the more that began to kind of slightly make me feel a bit uncomfortable.
It's a low frequency hum of death.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, what's all this Carrion? That's what I said, Russ. And we all laughed.
No, it's a good joke, that, Mark. I could not find. I was trying. What is this catalyst from flax? I could not, because he specifically says that, doesn't he? And I couldn't find.
It is one of the worst explained segments I've ever seen, because there's even imagery to show how it works, and none of it makes any sense.
No,
I don't understand what it's doing. Yeah,
no,
it's so underexplained.
So I went on a little bit of a journey trying to pin this down, and there's a weird thing happened. So I looked into what do they use? What do they use to kill the smell, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously, immediately activated charcoal comes
up. Of course.
Yeah. And basically, I mean, bleach will do it. Most things that they use are types of bleach. But there was this one thing, when I found, like, what natural stuff do they use? And it turns out there is this one thing. It's a zinc salt, and it's called zinc ricinoleate, right? And everyone bangs on about this. This is the best sort of natural deodorant that you can get. And where's it from? And I looked into it. And the ricinoleate part of it is it's castor oil. So castor oil is from the castor plant, obviously. Mm-hmm. Like, it has very similar uses to linseed oil, which is what you get from flax. Mm. But flax doesn't contain any ricinoleates. Only castor oil does. So I'm wondering whether Toronto got confused between castor oil and linseed oil. I don't know, but I can't imagine they've done it. So there's absolutely no indication that linseed oil is any good at getting rid of smells. Whereas castor oil, once you turn it into this zinc ricinoleate stuff, absolute great stuff at doing it. Yeah. So, you've got these companies, these cosmetic companies now that don't use chemicals, as they call it. Yeah. Everything's a bloody chemical. Yeah. But they want to use everything that's natural. So when they make deodorants, they put this stuff in it. It doesn't work in the same way that a normal deodorant, so your Lynx or whatever, what that does is that got something in it, usually like triclosan or something like that, which kills the smell-making bacteria, and then it's got a perfume in it, which then covers up the smell. This zinc ricinoleate stuff, what that does is the smell molecules hit it and they bond to the surface of it and they're neutralised. It's actually, like, it works in a more sort of effective way, really, and because essentially it's stopping the smell getting to your nose in the first place.
Do you know how many smelly parts per million it's able to block?
There was no mention of smelly parts per million at all anywhere on any of these websites. Maybe it's an imperial measurement. We don't use it anymore.
Oh, that must be it. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Russ. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to buy 10 kilos of zinc ricinoleate, You can buy it on the internet now, and that'll cost you €104. Just get 10 kilos of that and just slap that under your arms every morning. You'll be absolutely laughing.
Sorry, Ross, I wasn't listening. I was just trying to work out. I wonder how many smelly parts there are to make a one honkometer.
The thing is, honkometer sounds like some sort of measuring device, right?
Oh, it does. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, the ending. We have to talk about the ending.
Oh yes, yeah.
Because it is so peculiar. It's so weird. It is such a damn squib. Partly because I think at this point now, obviously, we know Kieran Prendiville is a bit of a cult favorite for a lot of people, and you can see why. Like in general, like his tongue is lightly in his cheek throughout any piece he does, but ultimately he's actually quite good at delivering them. But he seems to have a bit of leeway to either script or ad lib some outro.
Yeah.
And a little bit later, there's a better example of him doing it nicely. Here, he just loses all confidence and just stops.
Oh, by the way, I have been asked to smell the rerouted airflow and confirm its wondrousness. And yes, it smells like fresh country air, yes.
The honkometer is declining on the scale from 60 to 20 parts, smelly parts per million. So you can see it's working. And then he says, I've been asked to smell the rerouted airflow and confirm its wondrousness. And yes, it smells like fresh country air. Yes. Stop. And that's it.
Yeah,
it's just so oddly delivered. I loved the delivery, but I was absolutely gobsmacked that it immediately then cut into the next segment and just stopped. Like, that's literally, he just stops.
Yeah. And I couldn't tell, was he trying to think of a segue? Or
I had to be.
Was it just a non-sequitur?
That can't be scripted.
It made me think of that first time we saw him, where he delivered that really strange no. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
when he was doing that,
yeah. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I can see how the joke would have been like, it smells like country air, i.e., your mileage may vary, but as a city boy, country air stinks to high heaven. But I can see how that might have been, but he doesn't. Then he just sort of goes, yes.
I think maybe if we watch a couple more Kieran episodes, we might have to include him in the audit as a strange verbal tick from Kieran or something like that. Maybe
a strained outro from Kieran. Yeah, we'll put that on the shadow list, Russ.
For centuries, sailors have tapped the free energy of the winds to drive them across the oceans. And now the ever energy-conscious Norwegians are working on an even more elegant way of getting something for nothing at sea. A wave-powered ship. And the rather incongruous setting for this new idea is a barn in the middle of the Norwegian countryside. The inventor, Einar Jakobsen. Now, the idea of a wave power boat seems rather too good to be true.
Yes, it surely is true. You see for yourself, it's running by wave power alone.
Now, you see, that doesn't really surprise me, because you would expect a boat to be blown along in front of the waves. I mean, a rowing boat would drift like that.
Yes, oh yes. But this one moves against the waves also. There you see.
Now, that is incredible. It really got some speed up there, didn't it?
Yes, you saw how it worked.
And this is what's responsible?
Yes, that's the foil propeller. It's driving the boat.
So how is that foil moving the boat forward?
So I'll show you here. This is a foil, and you have a wing which is kept in neutral position by the spring force.
It's sort of horizontal there, yes?
Yes. And when it is moved up in the water, you get the trailing edge moved down, and if you move it down, you get the trailing edge up. And this gives the propulsion. I can show you there in the water.
Right.
It's the same principle as the dolphin, the tail of the dolphin.
Now, that just looks to me like you're dragging it up and down the tank.
No, it is the foil who is dragging me.
Really?
Yeah, you can try yourself.
Right, doubting Thomas here. Right, now just bob it up and down, yes? Right? Ooh! That is incredible. It just shoots away, doesn't it?
Yes.
I haven't crunched the numbers, Mark, but it seems to me like boats are the most consistently represented mode of transport that we see on Smurfs World. I'm sure barely an episode goes by without some sort of boat-based activity.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, actually. This is the 21st episode that we've talked about, and actually even counting the couple of episodes we've rejected, yeah, boats and rowing definitely come up an inordinate amount. I can think of at least 4 examples off the top of my head. 5, actually, I've just thought of another one. Yeah, that's so weird. Apropos of nothing, though, I was going to say, like, what's the most boring segment that we've talked about so far?
Whatever.
Yeah, on any of our podcasts.
Michael Rodd trying to explain that radioactivity detector in the first episode.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, in that case, this is not the most boring one. Because just rewatching this again, it's like, oh, God, this is... So Maggie's in Norway, and I was about to say again, but we've previously seen Maggie in Norway in an episode we covered from 1984, which was broadcast, 6-7 weeks before this? And that was a really exciting bit about helicopter safety on oil rigs.
Yeah.
And
she torches a car.
She torches a car. Yeah, and we also get Alan Parsons' projects Sirius, don't we, play? Which just makes things
loved it.
Epically exciting. And that was a really interesting piece, obviously, because it fits into our grand plan. The real strategy of this podcast is for us to design and build our own oil rig so we can just sit back. What are all those stupid ads on YouTube? So we just sit back and enjoy all that passive income that I keep hearing about from people on stupid ads. And then this is just so dull. I hate this segment so much. The only thing I like about it is that Einar Jakobsen, the inventor, just because he's like even though he's Norwegian, like he's the classic. He's like that wonderful kind of I suppose let's say North European archetype-y, that kind of that shed-dwelling tinkerer, that nerd, in his kind of grey slacks and grey jacket, he's kind of come up with this wheeze. Oh, it's just so dull. I just don't care about it.
I wouldn't be surprised if Maggie said that he was also the inventor of Normcore.
Yeah. Great shout. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
he these days he looks cool.
What I didn't understand about this is that this is such a basic idea. I just could not get my head around the idea that this Einar chap had come up with a new way of making boats go along. Because all human nations, I think, probably pretty much live near the sea, no matter how far apart from each other, all have a history of seafaring. And, you look at the Japanese or the Scandinavians or the Mediterraneans or the South Americans, they all had their own different types of seafaring, and they all invented their own types of boats, which were all very different from each other and worked on different principles. And you would think over all those thousands of years of human beings sailing boats in the sea, someone would have come up with what is an unbelievably simple idea, which is just to stick a wing underwater and it magically makes your boat go along with you barely doing anything apart from like lifting it up and down a bit occasionally. But even then, you don't even need to do that, because he demonstrates, one of the ones he demonstrates, if you just leave it in the water, it just goes along.
I don't know. Maybe you needed the invention of the airplane wing for people to think about the idea of the way pressures build or dissipate depending on flow over an edge or whatever.
Yeah,
the illusion of science in my mouth. Maybe you needed something like that in order for this to happen. But he's very convincing that this system is a great way of propelling a boat forward. You have to trust that Maggie's not lying when she takes part in his experiments, and she's thrown across the fish tank with some alacrity.
That is ludicrous. It's like she's taking a dog for a walk and the dog's just like seen
there's a comedy. It's like from a 70s sitcom, isn't it?
She's suddenly propelled across the tank.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's laughable. You and I both enjoyed the bit at the end when she's out on a boating lake using a larger mock-up, and instead of rowing, she's kind of doing one of those kind of hand crank rail machines that you see in cartoons. Yeah. And she's at the front of the boat, and she's propelling it along, and she's trying desperately to pretend that it's easier than rowing, despite the fact that she's clearly horrifically out of breath.
Yeah. She says, and I tell you what, it's a lot easier than rowing.
Yes.
You can hear her panting.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that might just because maybe Maggie isn't quite as fit as she should be. Because this guy is talking about how, he's looking to kind of scale up and mechanize the process, and apparently it'll be much more efficient than a corkscrew
Propeller.
propeller. All very interesting. As I said to you, it's like, because there were two blades, one at the front of the model and one at the back, and the idea is that, obviously it's the undulation of the water is propelling the boat along, and also apparently keeping it stable, so it's a win-win for everyone. One of the most important things about engines and boats is the ability to go into reverse to stop them colliding with things, which anyone who goes on Reddit will see that isn't always true, and it feels like there's a cruise ship ramming into a dock every other week. But nonetheless, they at least have the ability to try and stop themselves. How does it work with this? How do you put the boat into reverse?
Spin the blades round.
You think?
I
do you think an airplane can just spin its wings around mid-flight?
Well, they've never tried it, have they, Mark? Maybe that's
true. That's true. Hey, write that down, Russ. We might be able to win here. We need to make bank with this bad boy. Come on. No bad ideas. The whole thing just seems so. Oh, it's just so dull. But this is like, even Maggie can't motivate herself to feel excitement about this. Yeah, I liked him. I liked Einar Jakobsen though.
I mean, he's a classic stoic Scandinavian, isn't he? Like he's not going to be, full of enthusiasm. No. I enjoyed the way that he basically interrupted her when she tried to start addressing the camera, and they just didn't bother doing a new take.
No, why bother? Yeah, exactly. Second take.
And the fact that his assistant, you only see the back of him, his assistant looked exactly like the back of Cheggers. I don't know whether that excited Maggie or not, but
he did look like a young Cheggers.
He did, didn't he? One thing that I think rescues this segment from total boredom, and certainly one thing that excited me most about this segment, is that Maggie Philbin is wearing an outfit where the sleeves don't match the body.
That's 100% correct, Chris. You're absolutely right. Yeah, 100%. And you can always trust the Philbin, can't you?
Yeah, and it is in fact the same outfit that she wears in this previous Norway segment that we mentioned before, the serious car burning segment. So I assume that this was probably recorded on the same trip, whenever it was. She had recorded a job lot of these Norwegian things. Yeah, they got the exciting one out of the way first, and then they're just burying this one in.
They are burying
in the January
schedule. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I will say, the one thing I was going to say actually, that there was a moment where you think, that could be quite interesting, where the guy talks about how his wave propulsion airplane wing system could be utilized for was it rotary generators?
Yes.
And the idea was that the movement of the ocean would propel these up and down, and that would turn the generators around. And actually, you wouldn't even need that much it wouldn't need to be a choppy day for it to keep the turbines turning. That felt like that might have been quite an interesting use of this technology. It did look good, because you see two models. It looked to me like they were bicycle wheels.
Yeah, definitely bicycle wheel.
Yeah, like it was all a bit ropey, but you could see how, like, okay, all right, that might be interesting, much more interesting than ships utilizing this technology. Yeah.
And you'll be surprised to hear, Mark, that I could find no evidence of those that generating thing at all. I could, however,
Russell. Oh yeah,
I could have find evidence of this type of propulsion of boats, though, which I was surprised by. Einar Jakobsen. There's not a huge amount about him on the old internet. And actually, if you search for him on Google, the first thing that comes up is this clip from this episode of Tomorrow's World. Yeah.
Wow.
There's also another clip from the Norwegian television station NRK, which luckily had some English translation, so I was able to watch it. And it's a slightly better interview, so he actually talks to the camera and explains the process a bit more clearly. And he says that he reckons that that paddle thing works with 90% efficiency compared to a normal propeller, which works at 50 to 60% efficiency. So that's quite a claim.
That is a big claim.
It is. And then he also says he was talking to a company, and they were going to build one of those wave power machines by next summer.
Okay.
I could not find any evidence of that. So I don't know whether they were stringing him along or whether he was just, bullshitting. Not sure. But I found his patents. His patents on there, on Google Patents, and he patented the idea in 1979. But because patents only last 20 years, which I didn't realise, actually. I should have found that out earlier than 21 episodes into this. Yeah. But it turns out the patents only last 20 years unless you renew them. And obviously, he was quite an old fella, so he didn't get the chance to renew it in the year 2000. But I don't think he deserved to have that patent anyway, because it turns out that there was a man called Herman Linden in 1895 at the Naples Zoological Institute who was observing dolphins and stuff, and he looked at them and he went, they're tails. I wonder if I could make a boat that works on that principle. And he's the one that invented a boat that works on this principle. And he called it the Autonaut. So called because it could drive itself without, and be rowing it. And it was 4 meters long, 90 centimeters wide, weighed 200 kilograms. It could travel up to 3 knots against the waves. There have been suggestions that previous to that whalers. So when they used to, back in the whaling times. When do you reckon whaling times was? When was Moby Dick set?
It depends on whether you're Japanese or not.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. We're back in Star Trek 4 territory again, aren't we?
Yeah.
But back in whaling times, there's stories of the whalers would notice when they killed a whale that if it was laying parallel to the water, because its tail is basically its fluke is basically a big paddle.
Mm-hmm.
That the whalers would sometimes use that to it would just start travelling itself, and then if they were being lazy, they'd chop its tail off and attach it to the underside of their rowing boats, and then use that so they didn't have to row their rowing boats because the tail would guide them. So that's the first sort of reported use of this principle. But this Herman Linden fellow was the first person to actually make a mechanical boat that worked on the principle. But then it got basically ignored for years and years and years and years and years. Cut to pretty much the present day, and there's this bloke called Mike Poole who lives down in the southwest of the K somewhere, and he started a company, safe in the knowledge that everyone's dead and all the patents are expired. He started a company called Autonaut with a capital N, and his company, they have autonomous boats. So they're called USVs, uncrewed surface vessels, and they use them for scientific expeditions. So they've got some solar panels on the top, and they're basically the same proportions as that original boat that Herman Linden made. So they're long and thin and light. They've got the two paddles on them, and if you're a scientist, you want to, I don't know, measure plastic or temperature or whatever you're doing, you attach the sensors to it and set it off on its way, and it will guide itself around the oceans indefinitely because it doesn't need any power. It's all powered by the waves and the solar. It will go off and do whatever scientific mission you want it to do, send back all the data. There's some blokes who keep an eye on it to make sure that it doesn't, wander off and crash into rocks or anything. But it can survive storms and stuff. They're self-righting, so they've pushed it through storms, and it's been fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's that company. So they actually do use this principle for a proper business and scientific purpose. So it is something that is used. And then the other time I've seen it's been used is in 2008. There's a legendary Japanese solo yachtsman called Kenichi Hori. Did I mention that yachting was invented by the Dutchman? I don't know if I mentioned that before.
You did in the Amsterdam special, the Dutch special. Yes, you have mentioned that, Russell. Several occasions. You're not Dutch, Russ.
Kenichi Hori, he was 69 at the time in 2008, and he had a special boat built out of recycled stuff, which also ran on this principle. And he sailed from Honolulu in Hawaii to Wakayama in Japan, which is 3,780 miles. It took him 110 days, and it was entirely powered by these self-powering paddle things on the back of his boat. And it was a much bigger boat. This is like a 3-ton boat, 9.5 meters long. And yeah, during the voyage, apparently he mostly ate rice curry, squid, and flying fish that he caught. I like that. I like to imagine him standing on deck with like a net, and the flying fish just sort of flying over the bow and catching
them in the air.
Yeah, and then when he completed the mission, he said, "Throughout history, mankind has used wind for power, but no one has appeared to be serious about wave power. I think I'm a lucky boy, as this wave power system has remained virtually untouched." So basically, it definitely does work, despite our doubts. But no one has really bothered to use it until recently.
I'm genuinely shocked that it has made it through the future.
Yeah.
All right.
So maybe we'll start seeing more of it now that everyone, now fuel's so expensive and everyone's worried about the environment. I don't know.
Why not? I mean, if it is as good as people seem to, as these loons seem to think it is, then maybe we will genuinely see it.
Imagine, if you will, that this machine represents a beating heart. I won't ask you to stretch credulity even further by imagining I'm some sort of surgeon, but this fluid-filled tube is what heart specialists would actually use to measure or to monitor blood pressure in the particular part of the heart they're interested in. Now, that information can pinpoint leaky valves, narrowed arteries, or congenital heart defects. The tube or catheter is put into an artery in the arm and threaded all the way along the blood vessels to the heart. The pulsing of the blood acts on the fluid in the catheter, pressure waves are set up, and those pressure waves are translated into an electrical signal which can be displayed on an oscilloscope for the cardiologist. But although those pressure waves are being set up in the heart, they're only measured outside the body, often some 9 feet away by a transducer, say it's here. And any movement, however slight, by the patient can jiggle the catheter and distort the reading. Look at the trace with the tube at rest, and now when I move it. and that's quite a distorted difference. In fact, it was dreadful when I did. There we are, much worse. And that's why doctors at Papworth are so interested in a new catheter undergoing clinical tests there at the moment. It's a catheter which doesn't carry liquid, it carries light. And over here we've got a model of how it works. First, a quick tour around it. These are the walls of the artery, and inside the blood vessel, the catheter itself. And that catheter contains two fibre optic cables, one to transmit light, and the other to collect it back off a mirrored surface, which can move backwards or forwards, depending on the strength of the blood pulsing in these bellows. Now, the further away that surface is from the light, the less intense the light that shines back here, and the microprocessor can use that difference in light intensity as a measure of distance. And because there's a direct relationship between the distance and blood pressure itself, the microprocessor can calculate exactly what the pressure is too.
Ever been hospitalised, Mark?
Not really, no. I've been to hospital, not hospitalised. No, I've never been in bed overnight. No. You, Ross?
Does hospitalised mean you have to go in an ambulance? Because I didn't go in an ambulance. I have been in hospital and had an operation underneath general anaesthetic. So that's hospitalised, isn't it?
That's hospital. Yeah, it's not about. It doesn't have to be an emergency.
Yeah,
you know, going in for an operation means you're hospitalised. I think if you have to stay overnight. If it's a bed you have to sleep in, then you're hospitalised.
So I've probably had one of these in me, and you probably haven't then, because from my reading, these are usually jabbed in people when they go under general anaesthetic. They tend not to be jabbed in people if they're conscious or whatever,
or indeed not in hospital.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah, so it's a medical segment, but it's almost like they've just whipped away the honkometer and then just pulled in something that doesn't look particularly different in front of him to play with.
No.
To play with instead.
Yeah, more scientific terminology as well. Instead of smelly parts per million, he talks about jiggling. He jiggles the tube this time round.
Yeah,
to get a reaction from it.
This is the thing. If you say catheter to me, I assume it's a
straight up your penis.
Yeah. Turns out that a catheter does not necessarily mean that at all. This is something that gets inserted in your artery and is used to measure blood pressure. And obviously, if it's actually in your artery, it's going to be much more accurate than putting a inflatable armband on somebody, like happens when you go down the GP. Yeah, so normally these things are full of fluid, but this one, they reckon if they use light, he doesn't say laser. It looks like it might be a laser, but I'm not sure.
I'm not convinced. I mean, I don't know what it is, but like, I feel like if it was a laser, he would have said laser.
If they use light, it will somehow be less susceptible to jiggling, and the jiggling obviously would affect the readouts. But how much jiggling do hospital patients do? I mean, it's not like you're attaching it to Michael Flatley, is it? It's not like...
I didn't read it as like the patient is kind of, writhing around like Linda Blair in The Exorcist or something like that. For me, it was more like just like staff members jiggling the tube, or like it getting knocked by people who are involved in the operation or the procedure. That's how I read it. And the problem is, unless no one touches it, someone's going to hit the, because obviously it goes off to like the drip. So it's like it's hanging out of the person. It's up in the air. It's going up to this secondary object, which itself can be knocked. So at various points through, no fault of the patient or any of the doctors, you're going to get an inaccurate reading of the blood pressure. That's how I took the jiggling. It's more like, he picks it up and he kind of shakes it around. That's not happening. But his point was like, look what happens if you shake it around. And that's just not, there are better ways of doing things. That's how I read it. It wasn't that like, it wasn't that the patient was flailing because they're in the general. It was more that because it's outside of them, there's just things that happen.
Why does it matter if occasionally the reading, because the reading would only be inaccurate for the brief second that somebody knocked the equipment. The whole point of this catheter is it gives readings in real time. So they're monitoring the patients. They're not going to see one false reading and go, quick, get the paddles out, or whatever.
True, but then how do you know if the heart is having a problem or the wire is being jiggled? Now you're asking an expert to go like, that was just knocked.
Because if the heart was, it would continue to be going bad after the jiggling had stopped. The jiggling's only going to happen for a split second, isn't it? There's not going to be like, unless they're doing this in an earthquake or on board a truck.
Well, hang on a minute. We're getting away from the point, which is that, I mean, regardless of the issues with jiggling at the moment, they've come up with a better system that means that's no longer an issue regardless. You and I are debating as to how destructive this jiggling concern may or may not be, what with us being experts and certainly not lay people. And now, here's Kieran saying, well, look, whatever problem there is solved. It's clearly enough of a problem for them to want to look for a solution.
Well, you say that, Mark. And also, I think we've probably said the word jiggling in more than any two people have ever said in such a short space of time. But looking into
you found
this,
no evidence of there being a problem at all.
There's absolutely no evidence that this exists whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
you just Google jiggle death, Russ?
Because it turns out that doctors, when they take their doctor exams, they're actually asked how one of these machines work. So there's lots of documentation on how these blood pressure catheters work, or what doctors call them. They call them arterial lines or ART lines. And they all definitely don't work using a light. They all still work using fluids. There's no light-based ones now. The way they work is you stick it in someone's arm, and the line is full of saline solution, and saline solution can't be compressed. No liquids can be compressed. That's how hydraulics work.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's quite a simple principle that the pressure of the blood then pushes the pressure of the solution in the tube, and then there's a thing at the end of the tube which measures it and converts it into electrical signal, which then comes out on the readout.
Beep beep.
Easy peasy. But one of the uses of this line is that they can also, at the press of a switch or a turn of a knob or whatever, they can withdraw blood for testing. So because they want to test the blood gases and things like that. And so that's why it's used to have saline in it. But what they don't use this for is administering drugs, or medicines or anything like that. Because I didn't know this. You can't give people injections in arteries. Did you know that?
No.
Turns out that if you give somebody an injection, you have to give it in their vein. If you give it in their artery, it causes such bad tissue damage that in all likelihood you'll have to amputate the limb. I didn't know that at all.
No.
It's a good job I've not been giving people injections, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently, it's a whole different kettle of fish if you try to start jabbing things in people's arteries.
Well, I'm glad I know that now.
Yeah. So obviously in all this documentation being used by doctors to revise for their doctor exams and stuff like that, it very, very carefully goes through how this thing works. And then it even tells you what the pros and cons are of it and how those things can be measured and ameliorated and things like that. Absolutely nowhere in there is there any concern about jiggling. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
Jiggling is not a concern in any of the documentation whatsoever. There's other concerns, like if you get bubbles in the pipe, then that can cause trouble because air's compressible, so it affects it. But no, jiggling is not a problem. They don't see that as a problem whatsoever. I think mainly because it's used on people under general anaesthetic and people in intensive care who don't move, and also
famous for not moving that much.
Yeah, and also just the jiggling is just a non-issue. It really is. I think a solution in search of a problem.
I was convinced that there was a spate of what I can only describe as jiggled deaths throughout Britain. Convinced.
No.
Amazing. God. All right then. So this is pointless. Next.
Our ancestors, who worshipped the sun with even more fervour than we do today, might unknowingly have been practising preventative medicine. Because scientists are beginning to think that the sun has unexpected benefits on our mood. In Tokyo, this contraption has been built to trap the sun's rays for cheering up people in the offices below. The Russians use bright artificial lights to keep their factory workers in a good frame of mind. And American scientists have developed the idea with this new lamp, which mimics sunlight and which they say can relieve winter depression. It's been found that as winter descends on the northern hemisphere, gloom descends on the people living there. And for some of them, that depression becomes an illness bad enough to take them into psychiatric hospitals for help. Now, while most of us like the sun, they actually need it. And the artificial light we use in offices and at home is no substitute. It turns out that sunlight has two important qualities. It's bright and it produces light in a particular spectrum. If I put this ordinary 100-watt bulb in front of this spectrometer, it'll be split up by this prism into its component parts. And as you can see, it produces the brightest light at the red end of the spectrum. A normal fluorescent tube produces this unnatural stripe spectrum with gaps in it. Neither are like natural bright sunlight, which produces a lot more light at the blue-green end of the spectrum. But this new lamp, as you can see, does produce that blue light. Let's look at all of them, with the new lamp on the right showing its broad band of blue light.
You don't strike me as a man who's affected by sad, Mark. I would imagine you're a man who enjoys winter because it allows you to wear more clothes and scarves and all those sort of things you like wearing.
I do. I do. Absolutely. I'm one of those people who, summer's fun, but give me the autumn and the winter every day of the week. I told you before, look, Russ, I bought a lovely coat back in February or March. I've not been able to wear it. I cannot wait to wear it, Russ. I'm counting down the days. I love the winter. Bring it on.
Yeah. I prefer the summer, but winter does not make me miserable. I mean, I feel sorry for the people that it does, but it's certainly not something that's affected me.
No.
I mean, as you may remember, I used to work night shifts back in the day for many years. And in the winter, I mean, I'd come home at, say, 6 a.m., tuck into bed by 7, it'd still be dark, have myself a nice, decent day's sleep, wake up about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it'd be dark
Pitch
again.
black.
I'd go 2 or 3 months without ever seeing sunlight. Yeah, it didn't make a dent in my unnaturally chipper personality whatsoever.
I'm not even going to make a joke. That is literally true. Yeah.
But I think what's interesting here, and I think you mentioned it as well, I did not know that they'd even heard of this. They don't actually call it SAD here or seasonal affective disorder. They just refer to it as a thing that, lack of light makes people sad. But I didn't know it was a thing they'd even thought of back then. I thought it was some sort of 90s, 2000s thing.
Yeah, I was surprised that they seemed to recognise it back then. God bless Judith. I mean, we've seen her do public health pieces and really have a huge amount of empathy. She doesn't quite hear.
No.
She does seem to basically say it's a them and us. Isn't it? It's like, I mean, we're fine, but some of these people, they need to be locked up in the goddamn loony bin.
Well, that's exactly how
the sun isn't out.
That's what I liked about it. I thought, I'm with you there, Judith.
Whereas, like, shockingly, Ross, I'm slightly more sympathetic than you are. I mean, I do wonder if it weren't for that couple of years when you were working nights, I think that, thank God, that probably rounded off some of the sharp edges of your unrelenting positivity, to make you a slightly more cynical person, which I for one am very grateful for. No, I'm sympathetic because I do, cause like it clearly, I mean, if there's one thing we know now, it's like it clearly is a problem for some people where like the absence of the sun, it can be very destructive to the well-being, which is, most people aren't. I was kind of amused. I was thinking about there was a footballer who signed, I think, for Man United. I tried to look it up, but I struggled to find it. And I think he came from Spain, and his wife was absolutely livid because no one had told her that like the sun goes down in Manchester at 2:30 in the winter. So like she's basically, there's like messages saying she's really angry that she doesn't see the sun for like 5 months of the year. I was like, yeah, I get it. Like especially if you come from somewhere like Barcelona to Man United, like that is a difference. We do live in a particularly gloomy country. I don't. It doesn't bother me, but I do know it does, and so it's interesting that they're already looking for solutions in artificial light. But yeah, I was amused by Judith's kind of underlying, slightly patronising tone.
I think probably the reason Judith's not affected by it is that bloody outfit she's wearing. Sweet Jesus,
isn't it? Yeah.
That's got to be one of the brightest outfits we've ever seen on here. It is, to paint a picture, it's kind of the classic sort of fluorescent yellow tabard that any sort of workman would wear with twin reflective stripes down between the shoulders. It's essentially one of those turned into a kind of quite fashionable sort of jumpery type thing. That's what it looked like to me. It is so bright. It is luminous.
I was about to say luminescent canary yellow.
Yeah,
beams.
It's a great outfit. But as I say, Judith always dresses for the occasion. So I imagine if she just sits around in that for, half an hour, that'll banish whatever winter blues she might have.
This is another segment where we have an example of them doing an experiment to try and prove something without really explaining what it is that they're examining. So we see Judith talks about this new light that's been invented that kind of provides a very blue kind of light, just like the sun. And to prove it, she shows us this kind of spectrometer, wasn't it? To kind of break down the spectrum of the light to show how like a normal table light gave off a certain reading and fluorescent light gave off a worse reading, but this new one gives off a better reading. But the problem is she doesn't, at no point do they ever show us what like natural sunlight looks like. So you, again, a bit like in previous ones, you were just left to trust what you're being told, which there's been a few too many of those in recent episodes where like it's the illusion of an experiment to kind of imply some kind of scientific rigor, but without really kind of explaining what it is that we're looking at. And so I found that a little bit frustrating.
It does make you suspect that they originally wanted to show you the actual thing, but then the actual thing wasn't televisual enough, so I just decided to bin it off.
Or that the results didn't really back up what they were saying, so they just binned the one half of it that might have explained it.
The other thing is seasonal affective disorder, SAD, in capital letters. When I see that, I now no longer think of seasonal affective disorder. I just think of the end of a Donald Trump tweet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well done. There's a man who does not lack for artificial lights giving off.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I don't know, but do those? I did not find that out because obviously the way it's treated these days is yes, people blast themselves with artificial lights, but I don't know whether just popping yourself in a tanning bed would that have any?
Don't know.
Probably might not be the right spectrum though, is it? Because I don't know, not sure.
It's all the burny bits of the sun without any of the happy bits. Yeah. Oh, and that was the other thing it was like, again, I know I'm probably reading too much into it, but she kept on talking about like the value of the sun, and she talked about how like what was good about the sun? It gives off light, which is great, but like at no point did they ever. I don't know. It really annoyed me, and I know it's about light, but like there is more to the sun than just the fact that we don't have to half the day isn't dark, so we don't need torches and artificial lights. Like there is more. And they just completely ignore that at all, which I know that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
But it's more like the sun gives us more than just relief from the darkness. But
that is a good point because all of the research is light based, but you could equally for example, in Florida, 1.4% of the population they reckon suffer from it, whereas in Alaska, 9.9% of the population. And they've said, well, that's because of the lack of light in the winter. You could equally say it's because it's hotter in Florida than it is in Alaska. I don't know whether they've even bothered pursuing that, or whether they've just latched onto this light idea and never even considered the fact that it might just be a heat-based problem.
I mean, as much as I do enjoy, or I don't dislike the autumn and the winter, it's like there is that moment, isn't there? Kind of like maybe the end of February or early March, where like it's a sunny day, the air temperature is 14 degrees, and you can stand outside and you can just look up at the sun and you can feel the warmth of the sun in your face for the first time in months, unless you've been away somewhere. That is always a really, really lovely feeling. Then I kind of get the idea of like you can feel your batteries being recharged. But it's from the warmth of my skin. It's like it's that kind of sense of like, oh, it's not going to soon, not yet, not for a while, but soon it'll be, we'll have those lovely hot days, those lovely sunny days that we like. Yeah, it's all about light for these people.
Yeah. The person who came up with all this idea is a man called Norman E. Rosenthal at the National Institute of Mental Health in America. He named it in 1984. Came up with the idea.
Rats of Nim.
And it's because he used to live in South Africa and then he moved to New York. And he wanted to try and work out why he was much more cheerful in South Africa than when he moved to New York in the winter. And he suddenly became a bit depressed.
Yeah.
And he tried to work out what that was. And he decided it was because South Africa was much brighter than New York in the winter. So that was his hypothesis. And so he started looking into this. Other people started looking into it as well. They reckoned that, so you've got the pineal gland in your brain, and that produces melatonin when it's dark. And melatonin is a very useful hormone. It's a very necessary hormone. It's a hormone that makes us fall asleep. But they reckon if you produce too much of it at the wrong time, then it's going to cause other things other than sleepiness, which are sort of kind of feed into depression. So some of the symptoms include feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness, thoughts of suicide, loss of interest in activities, withdrawal from social interactions, sleep and appetite problems, difficulty with concentrating and making decisions, decreased libido, a lack of energy or agitation. And also there was one that said falling asleep in under 5 minutes, which I did.
I wish.
Which is it's the other way around. I thought all of the psychopaths like me fell asleep in 5 minutes, and it was all the...
You do, yeah.
And it was all
people who don't feel guilt fall asleep instantly.
So your pineal gland, if it's subjected to blue light, then it doesn't produce melatonin. And that's why these days...
Yeah, your screens, your second
These
screens,
days they ever go, oh, stop looking at your screen before bedtime because it's producing blue light. Because that's stopping your pineal gland from producing melatonin, which means you're not going to feel sleepy. It's going to take longer for you to fall asleep. So that's why we have all these blue light filters on everything. But maybe you should switch off your blue light filter in winter. Has anybody thought about that?
Oh,
because if you've got that on in the winter, then you're giving yourself less blue light, and you're more likely to develop SAD. But so statistics. So like I said, there's like an 8% difference between Florida and Alaska. So in Finland, the rate of it is 9.5%, and actually generally across Nordic countries, it's obviously notably high, with one exception. Mark, there's one Nordic country. Have a guess.
Iceland?
Yes.
Of course.
In Iceland, they have ridiculously low levels of it, and no one knows why. Some people have suggested they're just genetically like that. Other people say it's because they eat so much fish, and fish has got loads of vitamin D in it. So the average Icelandic person eats 90 kilos of fish a year, which compared to the average American person, they eat 24 kilos of fish a year. So they eat like 5 times as much fish. And so they think maybe that might be it, but it might just be genetics. No one's sure. But the Icelandics could not give a monkeys about the darkness. They're all just being cheery, watching the volcanoes go by, having fun during Eurovision, all that monkey. So good old Iceland. But
sorry, watching the volcanoes go by.
Yeah, very slowly, but they
probably
do
parade of volcanoes
I think they
every year.
Go by.
Okay, there's continental drift.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So ways to treat it. There's the way that I think we've all seen, which I used to see when I was working nights at. Some of the office attention seekers would do this. Just stick your face in front of a giant light, basically. Yeah. Like a very powerful broad spectrum light. So you stick your face about a foot in front of that for about half an hour. That's meant to treat it. Obviously, that's quite inconvenient and annoying. So a lot of people don't want to do that. So the modern way of doing it, which is better, is to have less powerful lights, but have them in your room when you're asleep. And it's a thing called artificial dawn. So they just basically create the same light as dawn to wake you up, and that has a similar effect, but over a longer period of time. And you're asleep while you're doing it, so it's not inconvenient and boring and annoying. So that tends to be what people do these days to do it. And then just one last thing, Mark, and what I thought was really weird is in the Wikipedia article about this seasonal affective disorder, at the bottom of the whole article, there is just one last paragraph of facts, and it's this. Around 20% of Irish people are affected by SAD, according to a survey conducted in 2007. An estimated 3% of the population in the Netherlands experience winter SAD. So that's just it, right? So for some reason, they've picked out Ireland and the Netherlands, our two countries, Mark, and they've given us statistics for those at the bottom.
Gosh.
Isn't that weird?
That is weird. I wonder why it's 20% in Ireland and
3%
in Netherlands. Yeah, because they're roughly level with each other, aren't they?
Well, it just makes it sound like maybe other Irish people aren't as excited about warm clothing that you are.
Maybe. I suppose I just like pubs with fires in.
Yeah.
And those are annoying in the summer.
Yeah. Darkness is cosy.
Yeah, I think so. I've got a nice house that's nice in the winter.
Each season has its benefits and its drawbacks.
I think isn't the one thing I learned.
Stop picking on winter people.
Well, you and I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, and you often hear, especially comedians and actors who live and work in Los Angeles, and people often ask them there's probably plenty of good reasons for living in LA, though they profess not to like any of it. But obviously, access to the local industry is probably key amongst them. Yeah. But when asked what they don't like, people who weren't born there, they usually always answer the same thing, which is that there are no seasons. Yeah, that actually having that kind of cycle throughout the year is I love, spring is brilliant, it's so exciting. Spring is so exciting because you've gone through the winter, but I really like the winter, partly because I really like Christmas. You associate all these different things in your mind. I enjoy all the seasons. I mean, it does get a bit dark in Britain quite early. We live in the south as well. It gets worse as you go up north. Yeah. I get that. I do. I'm sympathetic to that. But in general, it's fab. Let's bring it all on. Think of all the clothes you get to enjoy. Yeah,
and you could sit by the fire and have a nice glass of whiskey, couldn't you?
called Find the Lady. And whenever someone pulls that trick on me, I never do. Face down, they all look the same. Happily, my livelihood doesn't depend on picking the right one. Scotland's whisky industry, on the other hand, faces exactly this quandary year in, year out. OK, which of these packets of barley is the good one? Come to that, which of them looks remotely different from either of the others? Scale up those packets of barley so they become lorry loads, and you begin to grasp the size of the whisky industry's problem. Barley makes whisky, but not every type of barley is suitable. 5 years ago, the maltings could choose a load by looks alone. Today, that's like playing Find the Lady with your future at stake. Because now there's a wealth of new varieties that look alike, but behave very differently in processing. This is barley that's germinating, 325 tonnes of it, and it's the first stage in the production of malt whisky. Because these grains hold the raw material, starch, that's later converted into alcohol. That starch is locked inside the cells of each grain, and the only way to free it is to soak it in warm water for a couple of days, and then after that to keep it warm while it germinates. Then, as each grain starts to sprout tiny roots, it also produces enzymes which break down those cells, releasing the starch. Mixing different types of barley is a bad idea because different barleys contain different proteins, some of which slow down the rate at which the starch is released. And if that happens, then the barley which leaves this plant for the distillery could cause a big headache later. Instead of a golden-coloured, slightly cloudy liquid that goes on to become alcohol, you get a gummy, sticky sort of liquid which goes on to make much less alcohol. An extreme example maybe, but it's what you can get if you process barley with proteins that lock up the starch and gum up the works. There is now, however, a way to spot the right barley by analysing a single grain. It's a technique called electrophoresis, which identifies the different and distinctive proteins in each type of barley. An extract containing the proteins is prepared from the grain, and samples are injected at the top of a sheet of transparent gel. When an electric current is applied, the different proteins migrate down into the gel at different rates. Those that travel faster move further. So after a few hours, the different proteins in each sample have separated out. Staining makes them visible as a set of protein fingerprints.
Like a drop of whiskey, Mark?
I do. Every now and then I do indeed, yeah. I've got a few bottles down in the downstairs.
Any favourites? Particular favourites?
There's an Irish one called Teeling, which I enjoy very much. I brought it for my brother's wedding. I bought some glasses and a bottle, and we enjoyed a drop before his big day. Yeah, it's very nice. That was recommended by a friend of mine who knows his whiskey. It's lovely, yeah. There's some nice ones, yeah. You? Well, you don't really, do you?
Well, no. See, I do, but I don't tend to buy it. But it's one of those things where when we were growing up watching TV, basically any program, if it was two blokes in an office, they would pour a scotch and drink it while they were chatting to each other.
Yeah, and then they'd pull it up by the bottle, but they'd pinch the two glasses and they'd carry it over one hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it always looked absolutely delicious.
Oh, so tasty. Yes, of
and
course.
then I remember, and obviously growing up, and then I, tried whiskey, and I thought, oh, this is not as delicious as it's on TV. But then probably about, 10, 15 years ago or something like that, I went, right, okay, I'm going to force, in the same way that, somebody might take up smoking. I went, right, I'm going to force myself to
neck a bottle.
I'm going to, so basically over a week, I just drank loads and loads of whiskey. And by the end of the week, I really liked it. So, so anybody at home who doesn't like whiskey, just do that. And then you too can be like a character in a 1980s TV program.
Myself and Josie went with her brother and his wife to a whiskey tasting because her brother always liked it. And I was like, again, like you, was like, I've always wanted to like it because it just seems like a really cool thing, and I kind of grew up and as part of as you say, pop culture that gentlemen drank whiskey. So I was like, I'd always liked it. And he goes, oh, neat. So we went, and it was like, it was brilliant, and that's what changed me. It's like just learning about it.
Yeah,
just like having someone explain to you what it is that makes it delicious or not delicious or whatever. And that was also where I learned that I don't like really peaty whiskies. A lot of people like really peaty whiskies, like they're, you know, literally they're grabbing sods of soil in their mouth and just kind of just wringing it into their, you know, down their gullet. It's like that. I find that incredibly unappealing. And there are lots of whiskies that are not peaty, and they're the ones I like. And then you learn that even like a tiny drop of water can completely change the flavor, you know, the flavor profile of the whiskey. Oh, fascinating. It's really interesting. And as a result, like, there's a few bottles I like. There's also, I've got a Nikkei by the barrel, which is really lovely little whiskey as well. Quite strong. You know, it's a shorter drink. But yeah, it's a lovely journey to go on. But yeah, you do. It's a bit like I remember when I was young, and, you know, you'd watch my dad and my uncles, and they'd all be drinking beer, and you'd be thinking like, that must be the greatest drink of all time. And of course, you know, you do try some, and it's absolutely rank. It is disgusting. And so when you first start underage drinking, you have to force yourself to like these things. Yeah. That's what the definition of an acquired taste.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when you were on this whiskey tasting trip, did they at any point explain to you how they get lorry loads of useless barley turning up to their distilleries every day? They then have to test before, otherwise it ruins their whiskey.
And funnily enough, the secret shame of barley wastage did not come up in our conversations, Russ.
This, to me, I think is the worst segment.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
In terms of, I don't really know what it is that's going on here, and they're clearly desperately trying to, as we say, make something boring interesting by padding it out with an entirely spurious opening.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just doesn't work for me at all, despite Kieran's best efforts.
Huge efforts. He's on location. There's a kind of a card game conceit. Like they have thrown everything at the wall to make this work, and still it doesn't, because it just makes no sense. At the heart of it, like, it makes no sense. There's no unifying theme to any of the elements of this segment to explain. I mean, if you've heard it, you think it's like, oh, it's about the fact that, you know, you need to test barley to, okay, great, brilliant. But it's not really about that at all, is it? Because at various points, he seems to indicate that actually distilleries are able to purchase the barley that they need and require, because of course they can.
Yeah.
The idea that, you know, it's potluck every time they go out to barley farmers who are randomly growing barley is absolute errant nonsense. But that is the only way this whole thing works. And that brings it back to the beginning, because at the beginning we see Kieran, he's playing Find the Lady, which is 3-card Monty, which is not actually a card game.
No.
It's a confidence trick.
Yeah.
You cannot win it. He doesn't seem to indicate, he says, I'm never able to do it. It's like, no, because you're not supposed to, Kieran. You're supposed to lose your gigantic £10 note that you put down. It's like,
what's a big £10 note in it?
Wasn't it huge? I don't remember them being that big. Or I do, but I just assumed it because I was small, and now I realise they really were gigantic.
Yeah.
It's a miracle children aren't blown away into the sky when they go with their pocket money. That 3-card Monty is a confidence trick. It is not something you can win. Maybe that is a better metaphor for this segment, Russell, than anyone ever realised.
Yes, yeah, I think it's an accidentally good metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah, it
totally,
is. Yeah.
Totally.
The whole thing is a metaphor. You cannot find the lady in this segment because it is being deliberately hidden.
Yeah. Wonder why they came up with that opening segment, because it has no connection at all, does it? Really?
No, it doesn't. Well, it only has a connection if it's true that distilleries have to discern the best barley from 3 random batches of barley. But that's just not true.
No.
So, you know, I mean, the idea of, like, you know, if it had been about actually, you know, obviously, because he even says later on, Kieran says that now there is a wealth of new varieties that look alike but behave very differently, which to me is an admission. There is a codified and organized system of barley growing and barley genetics.
Yeah.
Which means that there are different varieties. So you could, of course, use the distillery, ring up and say, I'll have 14 bags of best barley-o, my favourite barley, to go in my delicious... And they go, 14 bags, on its way. Yeah. And then, you know, if the issue was that, like, you know, actually 14 bags is 1 bag too many, you can only ever really guarantee 13 bags, so maybe one of those bags is likely, just through natural whatever, to be slightly poorer quality. Maybe you'd want to find that 1 bag, and here's a system to do it. But the idea that distilleries are buying random barley... Oh, no, not even that. The idea that barley farmers are deliberately growing random barley for shits and giggles is utter nonsense. It is absolutely bullshit.
Oh, what a strange thing. Do you want to know about 3-Card Monte?
Yeah, of course, absolutely, yeah.
It's an extremely old game. It's been recorded all the way back to the turn of the 15th century, which is kind of, whenever... I can't imagine playing cards are around for much earlier than that. But it's based on the shell game, where you have 3 shells with a P underneath, which goes back at least to ancient Greece. So this is a, this is a game that's
it's a Horiel grift.
Yeah, it's old as, mankind itself, which makes you wonder, how the hell does anybody ever fall for it? Like,
very true.
I've known about it since I was a child. I mean, it's seen enough films and TV programs for it not to be...
It's always shorthand for shysterism, isn't it?
Yeah. How is there anybody on Earth still falling for 3-card? It's like, how does anybody on Earth still fall for that trick where somebody pulls up to you in a van and says, "Oh, I've got some speakers I need to get rid of." But apparently they do. I don't know. It's I mean, like, is there anybody still who answers emails from Nigerian
princes?
Princes, yeah. That's
incredible, isn't it?
The other interesting thing is that Canada, it is illegal to even play the game or allow the game to be played on your premises.
Oh, wow.
With a punishment up to 2 years jail.
Gosh.
Which makes me think that perhaps there was a Canadian politician at some point who got done by it.
Yeah.
So that's 3-Card Monte. I did like the way that it cut from his table there, and there's the 3 card with the 3 bits of barley.
3 cards down, and then he
throws
puts
the 3
on top.
bags. Puts 3 bags of barley on top, and then there's a lovely sort of like transition where the screen flips down, and suddenly it's 3 very ominous looking barley lorries starting up and driving towards the camera. So I thought that was probably the highlight of the whole segment.
This goes back to what we're saying. It's like they threw everything at this segment because I actually think there's a lot of lovely imagery. There's a bit where Kieran jumps down into, I'm assuming, some kind of barley processing silo, which is like a gigantic, kind of 30-meter diameter metal yurt, and he jumps down into the barley that has been kind of combed like one of those Japanese sand garden things, and it looks fantastic. And equally, just there's also a lovely image of this never-ending conveyor belt disappearing off into the distance, processing the barley. It's just full of really great imagery, including the barley truck link there. It's just a shame it's in such it's labouring for such nonsense.
What? I don't know why they're doing it. So, because as we surmised, obviously there are special types of barley bred especially for whiskey. In fact, it is a hyper competitive industry, and there's whole articles and the magazines and everything where people are just discussing specific types of barley and which are best to use in whiskey. So everyone knows what barley they're buying. So why is this? Turns out there's 2 types of barley in the world. There's 2-row barley and 6-row barley, which essentially is like how many rows of seeds there are on the head. British barley is pretty much exclusively 2-row barley. Have a guess where they have big fat over the top 6-row barley, Mark.
Is it the US, Russ?
Yeah. And the content of the barley is a balance between protein and carbohydrate. I think he says that in the piece. And if you're growing it for whiskey, you want high carbohydrate because that turns into alcohol, and low protein. But equally, if you're growing barley for food for animals, you want the other way around. You want high protein, low carbohydrate, so they get nice and...
so they don't get pissed.
So they get pissed. And they get nice and fed and fat and juicy steaks or whatever. So all the farmers have been doing over the years is breeding the barleys and essentially trying to make the biggest carbohydrates to protein ratio they possibly can in the barley. And they're very, very successful at it. And over the years, they've got better and better. But what's interesting is that the barleys, each new variety, they give it a name. And they've all got kind of like, I don't know, the name's a bit like superheroes. They started off in the early part of the 20th century, one called Archer. And they moved on to Proctor, then Halcyon. Then in the 1990s, they got Golden Promise. Ooh. But then these days, in modern times, the ones that everyone loves, there's one called Chariot, Concerto, Laureate, Optic, Firefox with a double X, and my favourite, KWS Sassy. But their yields are absolutely off the charts, and they're always looking for whatever the next highest yielding barley is, and there's always a new one in the pipeline. But the key to it is that at every stage of this, they all know exactly what barley they're growing and who they're selling it to and what they want. Of course. And so what's happened now, because we live in the age we do, you've got your hipster whiskey makers, haven't you? Yeah. Obviously.
Of course.
Your hipster whiskey makers. And they
A small batch.
They don't want, your small batch. They don't want your modern superhero barleys. They want your traditional, locally sourced barley. So they're going back to the older methods, and they claim that you can taste the difference between locally sourced barley and super barley. All of the more well seasoned experts say this is absolute nonsense because the barley goes through so much processing before it becomes whiskey that it would be utterly impossible to tell the difference. But anyway, that's what they claim. But obviously, these hipsters are not going to be using high-tech scientific equipment on their barley to find out which ones to use. So no one's using this. Right. So what is the invention? Like the invention is not. So this machine is called an electrophoresis machine. It's not that because that's used for loads of stuff. That was invented in the 30s and is used for all sorts of different applications.
We've seen
so
it before.
It's not that.
Yep.
So what is the invention? Why are we seeing this? Is it just so Kieran can go to Scotland? But even then, he doesn't enjoy the drink he has.
No, he's quite the stick in the mud, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because it sounds quite nice. What was it? It was whiskey, oats, and honey, which sounds like a nice thing to have on a cold winter's evening.
Well, exactly. It's called an Athol Brose. I looked into this, obviously. I'm quite tempted to make one myself. It's quite easy to make. The only ingredients are porridge, whiskey, honey, and you can put cream in it as well if you want it a bit creamy. So basically it's like a traditional Baileys type thing really, but made with oats instead of dairy. So your vegans probably would like it as long as you don't put the cream in there. And is honey vegan? Honey's probably
you can't have vegan. Yeah,
you can't have honey
rather. You can't have no, because it's a product of animals.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to put some NutraSweet in there instead or whatever. But apparently the Athol Brose, it was created by the Earl of Athol in 1475. When he was trying to capture Ian MacDonald. I worked with somebody called Ian MacDonald. Got the same bloke. Lord of the Isles. Is he? And leader of a rebellion against the king. Hearing rumours that MacDonald was drawing his drinking water from a small well, the Earl ordered it to be filled with honey, whiskey and oatmeal. MacDonald lingered at the well, enjoying the concoction, and was captured.
Oh, stop.
Think that's true?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Imagine being really thirsty and turning I'm going to murder a glass of water, and then turning up and getting a glass of oats, honey, and whiskey, and going, oh, this will do. I'll just hang around here and drink.
I'll just hang around here, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think I might try making one of those at some point. I reckon Kieran's wrong. I reckon that'd be quite nice.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I know it's not a recent invention, but that's certainly something I learned from this segment. That sounds quite interesting.
Yeah. I think it's probably the best part of this segment. Actually, I don't think I've got any positive, really that much positive.
I like some of the visuals, but no, in general, you're correct. I mean, it was one of those where the first time around, I'm thinking that doesn't make any sense to me. And then the second and third round, I was like, this is a clusterfuck.
But the good news is that mowing your lawn this summer is likely to be a good deal safer than it's been before. Every year, around 2,500 people are treated in hospital because of mowing injuries, and the majority of those accidents involved one of these hover mowers. Not difficult to see why, what with this flat metal blade whizzing round at speeds up to 200 miles an hour. So, if you do happen to be careless and you run it over your feet, or the cable, well, look at this. The results just don't bear thinking about, do they? But by the time your lawn has grown enough for you to want to mow it, there'll be a new type of hover mower which will cut the grass nicely, but it won't mangle everything that gets in the way. This is what makes the difference, this blade here, because as you can see they've replaced the heavy metal one with a lightweight plastic version which is hinged. So if something does get in the way, whether it's a stone or your foot, the blade just moves aside, and then as the obstruction clears, it drops back down into place. The worst thing that could happen would be that you'd break the blade or it'd fly off, in which case you'd have to slip on a new one. Simple, isn't it? But does it work? Over to the shoes! Now, I'm not saying that your feet wouldn't be bruised with that sort of treatment, but I know which shoes I'd rather be in.
I always think it's a sign of our times, Mark, that there is a computer game you can buy these days where it is a lawnmower simulator. Have you ever seen that?
I have. Limmy's played it online. I have seen that. Yeah.
Because I remember when sort of European Truck Simulator came out, where you're just a lorry driver.
Yeah.
I thought that's boring. But they seem to be upping the ante. And then, and I thought, lawnmower simulator, that's got to be there can't be anything more boring than that. And then the other day I saw that they've released Power Wash Simulator.
I was going to say Power Wash because I've also seen Limmy do that as well, and he's literally spent hours cleaning like a child's playground online. Incredible.
It's a real sign. I think that's a real sign of our times that something's going absolutely insane in society.
I assume they must have done well because of lockdown as much as anything, though.
Yeah, but I suppose mowing lawns is quite fun. You ever mowed a lawn, Mark?
Mowed my parents' lawn, yeah, and I never disliked it.
It's a good fun thing to do on the odd occasion. I think probably
yeah,
when it remains a novelty.
When it's not a chore.
Exactly, yeah. I'm not sure how much mowing Maggie's lawn needs here because I suspect it's probably AstroTurf.
Official, yeah.
But it is the brightest AstroTurf. Every time we've ever had vegetation in the Tomorrow's World studio, something happens to the image. Makes it look like they've gone to heaven or something. Like it is so unbelievably vibrant.
Yeah.
It's mad. I don't know what it... Is it just what the type of video it's been filmed on, or do they just really pull the stops out whenever they bring the plants in? I don't know.
It's very difficult because obviously there's the Raymond Baxter. He was testing the soil moisture meter, and that was incredibly vibrant. There was the mystery woman who was in the farm talking about green silage for animals. What's this you have, Russell? You rushed off.
Look what I took delivery of yesterday.
Is that a soil moisture meter?
Soil moisture meter.
Wow.
Yes. It works a treat.
Yeah?
It doesn't require batteries. I don't know how the hell it works.
How does it work?
But you put it in the soil, and the needle on top of it tells you how, exactly as Raymond told us in that previous episode, how moist the soil is. Turns out that I massively overwater all of my plants because
I hear that's a real problem.
The needle it absolutely zooms straight up to top 10 wet instantly every plant pot I put it in. So that's taught me a lesson. It's probably why half my plants always die. Sorry, I just remembered that.
No,
when you were talking about the moisture meter there.
Yeah, there was the mystery woman on the farm where they were making the kind of the grass juice for animals, and now this, and it's like, you're right, every single time, seemingly regardless of Tomorrow's World epoch, that they're trying to burst our screen with colour.
yeah.
Incredibly piercing. It's really striking, you know. And she's in a fantastic kind of blue dungaree, which we'll talk about in a minute. Don't think we didn't notice, Maggie, that your sleeves don't match the body of your outfit again.
The rare double whammy, Mark.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? God, she's the best. Yeah, and even the lawnmower itself is a kind of a vibrant green.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong at all. It's absolutely tremendous.
And it's a delightful little set that they've got there. You've got a strange little fake greenhouse.
I mean, they could have gone outside to the blue piece of garden, but they've made an entire little world in the studio full of garden furniture. There's a shed thing. There's a working fountain.
Yes, which extremely phallic working fountain. The cameraman seems obsessed by.
Yeah.
Yes, some lovely garden furniture. Yeah, no, it's a lovely little scene, and as you always have in your garden, a row of carefully placed shoes.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a nice demonstration because the noise alone of them being sliced by the blade is quite satisfying, I think.
Yeah.
You'd imagine the toes being thwomped off by.
Have you ever seen that episode of Mad Men where he gets his toe chopped off?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
By the mother. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And because it's always something you're aware of. I think when you mow, it was the propensity or the possibility of some serious injury. I did once mow over the cable.
Well, I mean, Maggie just does that with absolute impunity here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then just immediately squats down in front of it. Surely that's a live cable now because the mower's working or was working until she cut through.
But it wasn't the cable like a demonstration cable? It wasn't the actual cable of the lawnmower, was it?
The mower cuts out the instant she goes over the cable.
Does she? God, I never even thought about that. In that case, yeah, she's just down on her haunches, eyeing up pure raw electricity there, pure cut electricity.
Yeah.
Oh, crikey! All right, well done her.
So I thought, I have to say, and I said in the notes.
You did.
I thought this is clearly a fly mower.
Yeah.
Because I thought that I was pretty sure that around this time, the only hover mow you could get is a fly mow. Because fly mow invented, well, not fly, I mean, fly mow is not a person. A man called Carl Dahlman invented the fly mow, a Swedish man, in 1964. He saw the hovercraft, that famous British invention. He saw the hovercraft and he said, I wonder if I can make a mower that obeys the same principle. And lo and behold, he came up with the fly mow. So, which the principle is that its body of the mower is light enough, because it's plastic, that the spinning of the blade underneath creates enough lift. It lifts off of the ground slightly, and it means you can mow in any direction, essentially. You're not reliant on wheels. You can just zoom over your lawn, easy peasy. But famously, fly mows are all bright orange. That's the company colour. And what I thought they'd done here is that they had decided that fly mows are so famously orange that they've sprayed this mower green to hide the fact. So because they're so scared of advertising on the BBC that they've sprayed this mower green to hide the fact that it's a fly mower. I'm going to have to hold my hands up, Mark. I was wrong.
Yeah, I have to say, I didn't comment on that because I saw 3 issues with that statement that you in the notes. 1, we know for a fact that BBC were not scared of advertising. 2, I kept on looking at it and it did not look painted.
Yeah.
And C, in the back of my mind, I knew there was a green lawnmower out there. And even before I had a chance to even Google it, you'd already updated the sheet with a Qualcost. And the second I saw that picture, I was like, of course it is.
Now, Mark, yeah. So last night,
Does not cut shoes, does not cut cable. Sorry, go on.
Right, it's just fun. I was on a stag do a couple of weeks ago, and we were all quite drunk, obviously. And for some reason, the subject of me possibly being autistic came up, right? And I went, do you think I'm autistic? And everyone went, yeah. I went, oh, I've never really thought about it myself. And then last night, I spent an hour and a half looking through photographs of old lawnmowers to try and identify this lawnmower Maggie's using on this program. Yeah. And then when I did find it, I was so thrilled. Yeah. I basically stood up and cheered. and then I thought, oh, maybe they're all right. Maybe I'm a bit autistic.
I don't know. You know, you're a perfectionist, Russ.
So I found it. And I mean, brilliantly, this is the first time we've managed to use the Argos catalogue in anger. Yeah. Here. This is
I assumed you stumbled upon this accidentally because you were
I looked through all the Argos catalogues. It turns out that the spring Argos catalogues, because there's obviously 2 Argos catalogues a year. There's the spring version and the autumn version. In the spring one, literally the first page you turn to after the contents page, lawnmowers. So this is from the 1986 spring issue of Argos Catalogue, issue number 25. And it's clearly the one. It's clearly the one Maggie's using, isn't it? It's the Qualcost
100%. Yeah.
Qualcost Hover Safe 12-inch electrical orbital mower with 3 years worth of free cutters.
Yeah. It's got the yellow cable she cuts through.
Yeah. Uses a tough plastic cutter to deal with long grass, but in an accident won't cut through cable or shoes. Adjustable height of cut, 1,000-watt motor, double insulated, safety lock button, complete with 40 feet of cable. Recommended retail price, £82.49. Argos price, $54.95.
Bargain.
It's a saving of nearly £30, Mark.
That is incredible when you put it that way, Russ.
It is, isn't it? Isn't it? So then, obviously, next step, type in Qualcost Hover Safe Mower into the Googles. Now I know what it's called. And I found an advert for it.
Ooh.
So here we go.
In the beginning, grass wasn't the only thing hover mowers cut. But that was before the less bobber boys got to work. They replaced the steel blade with a safety plastic one, and a faster motor was fitted to make sure it cut grass just like a steel blade. To produce the last word in hovers, the Qualcost Hover Safe. Another bright idea from the less bother boys.
Good idea.
That just throws direct shade at fly mode, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Yeah, because I mean, as I said, only fly modes are orange, and
that's what she's using.
Yeah,
in the beginning. I vaguely remember that, but maybe I don't. Yeah, that's tremendous, isn't it? The less bother boys.
Yeah, there's a whole series of them.
Clearly.
I didn't know Qualcost was such a big name in mowers, but the less bother boys do a whole series of mowing adverts there. So that blade that she shows.
Yes,
that very specific type of blade. That is still the blade that all of the safety mowers use. And not just Qualcast, like Bosch, all of them, they all use that design of blade. If you go on eBay, you can buy 20 of them for £4 right now. So it seems like that has never been better. The only people that don't use that blade, obviously, are Flymo. They have their own proprietary
Safety.
blade.
Yeah.
So Flymo are kind of like the Apple of hover mowers.
Yeah.
Where they've got their own thing, probably more expensive.
Yeah.
But you're paying for the name, aren't you?
Yeah, of course you are. That's how they get you.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Choosing orange as your corporate colour is a pretty bold choice, isn't it?
Ballsy. Sorry, it's the anti-green. It's the opposite to green, isn't it? Orange,
Yeah.
I mean, just look at Northern Ireland, you know.
Oh yeah. Do you think there's a real split between the lawnmowers they sell in Northern Ireland?
I mean, now that you've asked the question, I think there probably is.
Yeah.
There has to be, doesn't there?
Yeah.
Surely a nationalist family would never be seen dead with a Flymo.
No.
But I was just thinking more like, orange is like the opposite to green, so, and it stands out, and, it makes sense. It is ballsy, though, but like the fact that it's Swedish, I mean, I kind of always assumed it's like you always assume these things are either American or Japanese or something. So the fact that the Swedish is like, yeah, do you know what? I trust the Swedes to go big with their colours.
Must be popular in Netherlands as well, I guess.
I assume so. Well, you report back. Oh, then again, you're probably nowhere near a front garden, are you, or a back garden, because you're right in the middle of Amsterdam.
I wonder if it would hover on water.
Do you know what? I was just picturing the same thing as you, which is you on a Flymo trying to hover your way along the canal.
Like a jet ski.
That's exactly what I was picturing.
That's a good idea, Mark. I think probably the reason you say the Americans invented it or something like that. The reason the Americans don't, they all use ride-on mowers.
Well, that's the thing. Their gardens are far too big for a Flymo. Yeah.
And when I was growing up, my dad's main job was mowing lawn.
Yeah.
But he always swore by aerial mowers. But he had to, because he had to mow so many lawns, he would always use a petrol. But he always kept a Flymo in the back of the car because, and this is a top tip for people at home, if you've got a garden with a very steep grassy bank in it and you can't get your normal mower down it, then what you need to do is get your Flymo, attach a rope to the hand, and then you can basically operate it like a giant beard trimmer for your garden, and you can just drop it down that grassy bank and just shave it like that. And that's what you used to do. So, that's a little top tip from the world of professional mowing there, Mark. I don't know how useful that would be for the people at home, but I thought I'd include that just in case, anybody was having trouble.
No, I was the one last thing. Obviously, we called out Maggie for very helpfully wearing a classic Philbin outfit of, the sleeves not matching the body. I do also want to send out some mad props to Maggie for immediately also having our back by having to shout over the mower right at the beginning of the piece. I thought I was worried, Ross. I was worried. I was anxious that we wouldn't have enough boxes to take. But God bless her, she pulled it out right at the death, didn't she?
I really could barely hear over the sound of that.
Yeah, it's actually almost impossible.
It's always good when you pull one out of the bag in the last segment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it certainly washed away the bitter taste of the previous segment. I think.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Yeah,
it did.
It was like a healing salve. All right, then, are you ready, Russ? Should we get out our number crunching devices for our entirely word-based audit process? All right, Russ, then let's talk about the year in context. What can you tell us about the cinema box office in January 85?
So this is the chart for the 26th of January 1985.
Okay.
Number 10, Atmosphere by Russ Abbott.
It was worth the wait, wasn't it?
Yeah. Number 9, Do They Know It's Christmas by Band Aid. Number 8, Last Christmas, Everything She Wants by Wham. Number 7, Like a Virgin by Madonna. Number 6, Love and Pride by King. Number 5, Since Yesterday by Strawberry Switchblade. Number 4, Shout by Tears for Fears. Number 3, I Know Him So Well, Elaine Page and Barbara Dixon. Number 2, Little Red Corvette, stroke 1999 by Prince. And number 1, absolute classic, I Want to Know What Love Is by Foreigner.
Gosh, that's a very good.
That is
like a great top 10, isn't it?
Barnstormer.
That feels like the best one we've had.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Prices then?
Absolutely. Prices.
What have you discovered, Russ? Tell us about the prices.
The average house would cost you £43,000.
I was going to say, these days, with the way inflation's going, this is even more pointless than it has been in the past, because prices a month ago have no bearing on what prices are now. But nonetheless, £43,000 for a house, yep.
Yep. Gallon of petrol, £2. Bottle of whiskey, to connect to this episode, $6.99.
Okay.
Pint of beer, 70 pence. 20 Lambert and Butler fags, £1.15. 22-inch colour TV, £339.99. Mobile phone, the original mobile phone, the Motorola Dynatac.
Oh, wow.
£3,000.
Wow.
Copy of the Daily Mirror, 17 pence. Ford Sierra, £5,788. And 6 bags of crisps, 69 pence.
Oh, interesting. That's quite expensive, it seems. Okay, that was the prices. What about Argos for us?
So, Mark, Argos catalogue, would you believe it?
Yeah.
The most expensive kettle in the Argos catalogue is by this new up-and-coming tech company.
Yeah.
Very much the Tesla of the 1980s, I think.
Yeah.
Russell Hobbs.
Oh.
Is the K3T1 automatic kettle. Stainless steel body with new honesty design.
What does that
Switches
mean?
off when boiled. Safety cutout, 2,400 watts. Capacity 3 pints. Part of the new honesty range.
What does that mean?
Don't know.
What's the new
BAB
honesty range?
approved.
Okay.
It's got like a Japanese pattern on it.
Okay.
£20.95.
That's a bargain, isn't it?
Ooh.
Obviously, it's a bargain. It's a Russell Hobbs. Sampling of magazine covers to give us a sense of what was going on, I suppose.
So on the front of the New Scientist,
Yep.
how to pick the personality for a job. It's got like 2 big faces looking at loads of drones walking past wearing masks.
Ooh.
So I guess is it Briggs
Myers
and all that
Yeah.
malarkey? I've never done any of those tests, but
No, I've done it, yeah.
Aren't they just apparently just about as accurate as like horoscopes? And actually, they're not.
I think I've done them in away days. They're useful to kind of contemplate the way different people work differently.
Right.
And just to get an idea of like, you know, how you should be dealing with your colleagues and you know, I think it's fun and interesting, but I don't think anyone kind of picks people based on their 4 letters. So yeah, I mean, it's no different to an IQ test, really, isn't it? Although the only thing I'd say is like I've done them years apart and always come up with the same answer. So it's, you know, I've not changed.
I know it's 4 letters, but are all the letters of the alphabet available? Is it possible that your personality would come out as a swear word?
No, sadly not. No, it's there's
shame.
four broad categories and there's 2 letters marking 2 different traits. So it's very binary, but collectively you come up with like 4 indicators that 4 letters that indicate what you are in the 4 categories, and then there's a reading of like what that kind of broadly means about who you are as a person. I cannot for the life of me remember what I am. That's the kind of impact it's had on my life. Those one of those things where like, especially when you're in a larger group and you kind of people put where they are in the grid, you often find that you are with people who you go like, yeah, okay, we do work or behave in the same way, or more likely people whose approaches you just send you spare are often way off in a different square, and you go, yeah, that makes sense.
I see. Popular Science magazine. Can brainy new cars outwit car thieves? And Super Sweepers versus Smart Mines.
Okay.
So I guess that's some sort of
boat thing, naval
Cold War type thing going on there. Speaking of which, Time magazine has got Ronald Reagan being sworn in.
Yes, of course.
Nancy looking at him very lovingly there as he's got his hand on the Bible.
Oh, lovely.
Fresh Agenda, a new lineup. Obviously, it's the second time it's been sworn in. Private Eye, Lords TV Spectacular, and it's got 3 particularly old-looking lords there, and one of them says, "Are we live?" The other one says, "Only just."
Hey! Very good. 14
Times, is Nessie a giant squid?
Brilliant.
Viz, this is a very early Viz. This is only like issue like 5 or something like that. I can't remember what does it say, but it's a very, very early issue. It's got Billy the Fish, Mr. Logic, and Felix in his amazing underpants on the front. It's advertising the fact that it is extra pages, more adverts, bigger price. And interestingly, connecting back to our opening here, it's got featuring our Spandau Ballet Soft.
Oh,
so there you go. They were already thinking about these.
Well, Viz, asked and answered.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, Playboy holiday anniversary issue. There's a lovely picture of Goldie Hawn wearing clothes, sitting in one of those giant cocktail glasses.
Okay.
Sometimes there are people sitting there looking lovely with some red stilettos on.
Ah, delightful.
Yep.
Brilliant. So let's go. Tell me, most important invention: barley analysis, mood lighting, the light catheter, the wave-powered ship, the smell removal design. They're all pretty awful, aren't they?
They're all actually pretty awful.
Improved. Yeah,
I mean,
it's only when we do the audit we go like, oh, actually, there's nothing here.
I found some inventions that came off of these, but are not these.
Yes.
Which are good.
Yes, they don't count.
I guess maybe the safety mower has probably saved a lot of toes
Okay, yeah. Oh,
and
phew.
electrocutions.
Yeah. Let's go with that. I like that. That's good. Yeah, that makes sense. The most worthless invention?
Well, that catheter has definitely never been used.
Which I'm gobsmacked by. And in a sense, because there's that, and I think like the barley segment.
That smell thing.
That's got to be used by somebody.
Got
That
used
is
by
being
somebody.
utilised.
Not
yeah.
found a use for it. That barley thing, utterly
It's just
useless.
nonsense. Yeah. But the thing is, we're not terribly convinced about what they're actually trying to sell us in the barley segment.
No.
So I think it might be the light catheter,
Yeah.
because like as I said, like having watched that segment, I could have been convinced that it's a miracle people in the 80s didn't survive a horrific jingle episode anytime they were hospitalized. And now you're telling me it's all nonsense. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's got to be that, isn't it? Like that is a complete cul-de-sac of an invention, despite the epic promises that were being sold by Kieran.
Yeah.
Most inaccurate prediction of the future.
I reckon Einar Jakobsen seemed strangely confident that his invention was going to.
He does seem, doesn't
take
he?
the world by storm.
Yeah.
And not really.
And the thing is, like, he still seems like he's a bit of a crank and a bit of an amateur, and yet he does have a very impressive setup. But then the more you kind of reflect on it, not least like the kind of the model of the generators, like the more you realize, oh, he has just made these things from spare parts. Like they have walked into a village and been pointed at this shed on the outskirts, and this shunned man and his tiny trapped Cheggers impersonator just busying away. Yeah, maybe it is Einar. Yeah, I was looking at the wave ship thing. Yeah, I think you're right. I'm going to go with that. I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Worst script by a presenter? I mean, is it Kieran's weird outro to the his first segment?
Yeah, I guess it's either that or Maggie not bothering to re-record her first introduction.
The
to Einar.
Yeah, I feel that might be more in the director than Maggie, though.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's Macann not going full hog and dressing up like a Wild West sheriff.
Good point.
And I think he regretted it. I don't know why. Actually, I can feel it. I can feel like he wishes he had been a bit braver.
Yeah, maybe it's that. Yeah.
All right then. Best attempt at making something boring interesting. I mean, are we talking barley here?
Yeah, we're talking barley. We're talking about this. Yeah, they got that music from The Sting.
I do. Yes.
By Marvin Hamlish luring us in. I thought maybe we were back in the Wild West again.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, and equally, it's the second segment. I think where at some point we see a close up of presenter's eyes, kind of looking shiftily.
Yeah.
It felt like it was kind of connected to the first one. Of course, it just isn't.
No.
And they just throw so much at it, and there's just nothing to catch.
Nah.
All right, I'm glad we're agreed on that. Best use of music. Take it away, Ross.
It's the Wild West music. Do you want me to say what it's called again? I think
Yeah, please do.
You break out my Italian again. Il Pistolero dell'Ave Maria by Roberto Pregatio.
Brilliant. And I'm glad you took a run up to that as well, Ross. Yeah, very good.
I was only in Italy for 4 days, Mark. Can you
I
believe it?
know,
Only 4 days.
I know. And yet
I'm
you're
essentially fluent now.
essentially fluent. Yeah. I mean, if anyone ever asks you about guns or Hail Marys, you'll know exactly what they're talking about. Best or worst use of furniture?
Well, I mean, it's that garden furniture, isn't it?
It has to be. I think it's just fabulous to see, isn't
Beautiful
it?
garden furniture.
Beautiful garden furniture.
It'd be good if she got the thymine and just started running over everything. Just chopped the dice, yeah.
Most notable clothing?
Well, there's a couple of nice bits of clothing in this, but I think it's got to be the Judith's.
Oh wow, yeah. I was thinking Maggie's dungarees, but you're absolutely right.
Judith's retina burning luminous ensemble there. I think it just takes it. It goes so beautifully with that blue light she's standing in front of.
Yeah. It's a beautiful image, and I will be putting that on Instagram and Twitter, so you will all be able to share in that.
Yeah.
The resplendence. It's like a holy moment. It's like Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. You see Judith there, resplendent in yellow.
Turn the brightness down on your phones before you load it up.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
It could blow the screens out.
And obviously, don't watch it at night, because if your screen does take away the blue, you'd only see half the picture.
You'll be awake all night.
Yeah, that's true. Did we see anything in the episode that made it into the future?
Surprisingly little. Well,
yeah, shockingly little.
Bulletproof glass, that has. Yeah, I mean, they still use that. I mean, it's likely it will be replaced by Mr. Scott's transparent aluminium at some point in the future, but currently that's so expensive that only the military uses it. So everybody still uses that bulletproof glass, so that's still here. And surprisingly, that old Einar's cranky method of propelling a boat
gobsmacked.
Has suddenly, in recent years, found a new lease of life.
If you will, Russ, it has found a second wind. Much to Einar's chagrin. Genuinely, that was shocking. That's one of those times when you do, when you do a bit of research, and I cannot believe that something has made it through, because it seems yeah.
And the blades on that.
Oh yeah. So they're now
they
standard.
literally use those blades.
Those specific ones.
Now.
The Qualcast safety blade system.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible. So that is a standard. I mean, I've not mown grass in a long time, and that's partly because I live in London. And
Although next time I'm gonna shove my foot in it, see how much it hurts.
Oh, please do. Though I have to say, and then report back, I was very pleased that Maggie did say basically, like, look, I'm not saying you're not going to get a hugely bruised foot. Like, she was like, the idea is like, oh, by the way, this isn't safe for fun. It's just safer, and it's not going to have your toes removed. I thought that was a nice bit of business. It was almost like she was having so much fun, she realised that maybe, everyone's going to try it at home. Yeah, because the way she proves it is by slowly rotating it and then putting her fist in front of the safety blade. Please, if you're listening at home, don't punch lawnmowers. It's not a good idea. What does this episode tell us about the 31st of January 1985?
I would say this sort of, 4 or 5 year section of the 80s, I think, is consistently my favourite era of Tomorrow's World.
Well, I
think I've enjoyed every episode from this era.
I was going to say, off the top of my head, I can think of 3 episodes, all starring Kieran, but that's just the way of kind of remembering this particular era. And I think all 3 have been really fun, or they've had really fun elements.
Yeah.
I mean, this does slightly predate us, doesn't it? Like, this is slightly before our time of we're later 80s, early 90s. But yeah, this is a lovely time. This is Tomorrow's. But yeah, there's a lot of bait and switches in this episode, though, aren't there? There's a lot of overpromise, under delivering. There's a kind of a very casual relationship to science. I just realised, okay, there we go. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, they've cranked up the entertainment dial.
Yes.
And balanced it out with a turn in the actual
the fact dial. Is gathering dust in the background. Because it's untouched. Yeah. TW tropes, Ross. I mean, there's some good ones here. I'm delighted. I'm delighted with the ending of the episode. Presenter having to speak over louder sounds.
Oh yeah.
Damn straight nitty gritty. Maggie Philbin's sleeves don't match her body.
Mark.
Not once, but twice. And not even Maggie Philbin in inverted commas, i.e. every generation's Maggie Philbin. The actual one,
Yeah.
I don't recall a single Stanley Kubrick reference.
I don't think so, no.
No. I don't recall anything to do with oil rigs.
No.
I don't think I recall a suspiciously obvious brand on the ad-free BBC.
There's literally only one brand on this entire episode.
Which is?
And it's when they're in the Wild West segments.
Oh,
there's a close-up of the Wells Fargo Bank.
Wells Fargo Bank, yeah. But seeing as there are no Wells Fargos in Britain, to the best of my knowledge.
No. Although I did find out Wells Fargo the people rather than the bank, invented American Express. I didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm going to leave that alone. That just seems that's like a nice bit of
no
set
one watching
decorating.
this program can be able to immediately run out and open an account with Wells Fargo.
No. Clear and blatant lying? That's a clear and blatant yes.
What are you putting in that
the barley bullshit. Yeah. Also nonsense from beginning to end. I'm not going to say Kieran's lying about the light catheter, to be honest, because that's not his fault that's nonsense. But the barley stuff is like, come on, you know better. There are no evil farmers.
Well, I mean, how evil's a maggot farmer?
Or indeed, does a knacker count as a farmer? I don't know, but like we don't witness their evil behaviour. Then maybe give your maggots a bit of a bath every now and then. I don't remember any casual sexism.
No, don't think so.
I don't remember a Dutch angle.
No.
I don't remember an item presented from the gantry.
No.
The episode does not end in a damn squib. It ends to the camera cutting away to a phallic fountain. What
spurting
more?
Fountain. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Woolard or Macann abroad?
No, it's a false positive here. Macann seems to be abroad, but
it's illusory at best. Yeah. And there's no lasers and no magnets that we can definitely confirm.
No.
So after all that big hype, it's only because of that last segment do we have 2 out of 3 of the boxes that we've ticked being ticked. I'd say anyway, because we could have argued over the Norwegian thing, but thank God for Maggie Philbin, and that's it. That is episode 21 done. And Russ, I believe, what is it? There's only 1,379 episodes left. So.
I love the way that you always struggle to do the maths every time you try and work that out.
I know. That's not even that difficult.
Well, Mark, I've got to go now. My doorbell's just rung, and I looked out the window, and there's a very angry midge-ewer standing in the street. And And he's asking me outside.
Yeah. Well, I told you, Ross.
yeah.
Chat shit, play games. You're gonna get beaten. Oh my god. All right then.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to go down there and teach him a lesson. Obviously, it means nothing to me, but
hey. Very good, off the top of your head and everything. Brilliant.
So, assuming I survive, until next time, it's been nice to see you. Been nice to speak to the people at home, and I'll say goodbye. And if you are on the internet, we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.